Laying on his back surrounded by corpses was Naruto Uzumaki, the new Juubi Jinchuriki. After he had sealed the Juubi into himself, the war was over with Madara, Obito, and Kagaya dead. Everyone was celebrating before he sensed the evil intentions aimed at him from every shinobi. They were faking their happiness to get him to drop his guard, and it almost worked, but he was ready when they suddenly charged him, only for him to slaughter the lot of them. What am I going to do now? Naruto asked himself with a sigh before a blinding light filled his vision. Blinking, Naruto stood up to see he was surrounded by a sea of gold. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto looked around before he saw a man clad in white materialize in front of him. Who are you? I'm Kami. Kami introduced himself. What do you want with me? Naruto asked cautiously, not bowing down to Kami. Kami smirked at Naruto. That's one of the main things I like about you. You refuse to bow to anyone, even me. Anyway, I'm here to give you your reward for bringing peace to the world. Peace? I killed the entirety of the Shinobi Alliance. How is that peace? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Please. That alliance was never going to last. They would have turned on each other soon enough. With the Ninja Alliance dead, the Daimos have outlawed chakra usage as a whole. Kami said. And without the Shinju's presence, chakra will cease to exist in a matter of days. Naruto said as he had felt all the chakra draining away before he was brought here. Exactly. Kami said before he snapped his fingers and immediately Naruto's chakra exploded. Surprised, Naruto looked around himself at the aura chakra surrounding him. Before he could say anything, Kami spoke. The elemental nations is now gone. All excess chakra and nature energy returned to you. Returned? Naruto asked. You haven't realized it yet. You're not the Jinchuriki of the Shinju, you are the Shinju. Kami said. Naruto chuckled softly as he looked down to his palms. I had some suspicions, but I didn't have time to verify them myself. Is that why you're here? Just to tell me that I've shredding my human coil, and I'm now a being of nature? He asked. I came to give you a new life. Kami said, getting a surprised look from Naruto. There's a world that's in its 10th century now, and I'm going to be sending you there. What am I supposed to do there? Save the world or destroy it? Naruto asked. There is no expectations for you. This is a reward for you, so enjoy it. Kami said before he de-aged Naruto before he could reply. Walking over to the infant Naruto, Kami picked him up and looked down at him with a smirk. You'll make a perfect addition to the Mikhailson family. He said before he placed his hand on Naruto's forehead. With a wolf gene, you'll fit into this world just fine. Naruto's eyes opened, they turned a golden amber before Naruto's chakra suddenly surged and his eyes turned red with a slit pupil. I guess a wolf gene empowered by chakra will be interesting to see. Vampire Diaries Universe. 10th century. Esther, Ayana and Michael were in their home discussing Esther's choice to stop doing magic, when they were called outside. Michael and the two women walked out to see storm clouds had suddenly appeared in the sky. What the? It was clear out here moments ago. Where'd the storm clouds come from? Michael asked before he turned to his wife and their friend Ayana. Ayana, have you ever seen anything like this before? No, but I sense a large amount of power approaching. Ayana said, just as a tower of lightning struck the ground, causing everyone to back away, with Michael standing protectively in front of Esther, and Ayana with his sword at the ready for any threats. When the tower of lightning subsided, leaving a small crater in the middle of the village, everyone saw a disguised Kami standing there. Kami is in the disguise of Odin. Who are you? Michael demanded. I am the All-Father, Odin. Kami introduced himself, and watched as the mortals got onto their knees and bowed to him. Forgive me, Lord Odin. Michael said. Don't worry about it. Kami waved off the apology. I've come over give you and your wife something. Michael and Esther looked at the god in surprise. Come. The husband and wife walked over to Kami, shivering from the power rolling off of him. They watched as Kami brought his hands up as if he was carrying an invisible bundle, and in a crimson flash, infant Naruto appeared, causing the couple to go wide-eyed. This is my chosen one, Naruto Uzumaki. Kami introduced. He has finished the task I assigned him in his world, and as a reward I have brought him here to live a relatively peaceful life. Kami said before he played Naruto's life in the villagers' minds from every mob attack, to his fight with Kagaya, not wanting them to see him killing every shinobi. Michael and Esther looked at the baby. They were looking at a man-turned-child that held all the qualities they would ever want in their own children. Fearless in the face of danger, a leader, reliable, a warrior, a man that respects nature, someone that would protect his precious people till his dying breath. "We'll raise him," Michael said. "He'll have the family he couldn't have in his world." Esther said, taking Naruto from Kami's hands and looking at him as he stirred awake, allowing Esther to see his red eyes with 3 rings, and 3 dots on each ring, before they vanished to a deep blue color. Smiling down at Naruto, Esther spoke. "Hello Naruto, I promise you, your childhood won't be consumed in loneliness. I as your new mother will make sure you are happy." 7 years later, Michael walked through the snow-covered ground, looking around for someone. Coming into a clearing, he saw the spiky golden blonde hair of his adopted son, Naruto. He called, walking over to the boy who was sitting in the snow, hugging his knees to his chest, while looking down to the ground. "Am I a demon, father?" Naruto asked, looking at his palms. "Why would you ask such a thing?" Michael asked, surprised by the question. "I'm a better hunter and fighter than the other children. They look at me with such envy. They whisper demon, freak, and other hurtful things." Naruto said, not looking up at Michael. "They hurt your feelings?" Michael asked, and made to scold Naruto for this weakness. "I don't care what they say about me," Naruto said, causing Michael to pause. "It's just that, what if they decided to spread rumors and choose to attack me? What if during their hunt for me, you, Mother, Freya, along with little Finn, are killed because of me?" Michael looked at Naruto in surprise before he smiled gently at Naruto, and kneeled down beside him, while placing his hand on Naruto's head, rubbing it affectionately. "No one will attack you, Naruto. Even though we don't share the same blood, you are my son. I will gladly die for you," Michael said, getting a smile from Naruto before he placed his forehead to his son's. "Now come, your mother has made supper," and little Freya grows worried. Smiling, Naruto stood up and walked alongside Michael. Present. The abattoir. Marcellus Gerard was getting fitted for a suit, accompanied by his right-hand man Thierry. "Damn, I do look good in a suit," he said. Thierry chuckled, before he turned to the television, where a photo of 2 tourists were shown, Tina McGreevy and Joshua Rasha. "My guy at the docks is gonna come forward as an eyewitness, saying he saw those 2 drunkenly fall into the Mississippi. They'll be dredging for weeks. No one will come looking around here," Thierry said. "That's good, considering one's dead in a dumpster behind the county morgue and the other one is a vampire now." "Anything else?" Marcel replied before the tailor suddenly pricked her finger on a pin. "Ow," she hissed. Marcel, looking down, said, "Allow me, darling," before he crouched down and took her finger into his mouth, cleaning the blood off. "One thing. I sent 4 nightwalkers to look into a werewolf sighting in the quarter. I haven't heard from them since," Thierry reported. "That makes 10 dead nightwalkers in the last week." Marcel sighed before he stood up while straightening his blazer as he asked, "You think the werewolves are back in town trying to start some trouble?" Thierry sat up and said, "Look, I know you and Klaus are friends, but the fact is, since the originals showed up." Before Thierry could finish, Klaus arrived. "Oh, come now, Thierry. You're not still upset about that little, toxic werewolf bite I gave you, are you? I thought we were at bygones," he interrupted. Thierry looked to Marcel. "I see you've given him free rein of your compound now, too." "Yes. Well, seeing as my family and I lived here, built the place, in fact," Klaus said. Marcel, knowing how violent Klaus is, decided to intervene before something jumped off. "All right. Come on. You both know the drill. Thierry's my guy, inner circle. Klaus is my old-time friend and sire. He's also a guest here. Peace. All right," he said before he looked to Klaus. "All right. What you need, my brother?" "I'm afraid my sister Rebecca is insisting I demand Elijah's return. She's quite worked up about it," Klaus said. I'll say. Marcel muttered as Rebecca had almost killed him and his love interest Cammy. Marcel and Rebecca never happened, they were just real good friends. We're not gonna have 3 originals walking around town, are we? Half our guys think the sister killed the Nightwalkers. Thierry said. Is that an accusation? Foolishly Thierry turned to Klaus and shrugged. Against an original. Klaus growled before he stormed toward Thierry, who looked to be ready for a confrontation, but Marcel interfered. Okay. What did I say about peace? Marcel asked as Klaus smiled smugly at Thierry before Marcel tapped Klaus on the chest and said, "Come on. Walk with me." They walked out along the balcony of the building. As Klaus spoke, "Your inner circle man lacks a sense of humor." Marcel sighed before they walked down the stairs as he said, "He's a little overprotective, but loyal to a fault. I saved his life back in the 40s, found him dying of a war wound outside a VA hospital. He'd kill for me and die for me. Plus, that boy can play the trumpet like you would not believe. Maybe I'll see if he can play a little tonight at the party." "You're coming, right? How can I miss my chance to meet the city councilman as he accepts your gigantic charitable donation?" Klaus asked. "Oh, he's a schmuck, but he lets us do our thing in exchange for certain community services, like keeping our fangs out of the locals. Listen, about your brother. I would love to help you out, but Thierry is right. My guys are on edge. They see the original family moving in, vampires dying, it makes them nervous. If I hand Elijah back now, it might give the wrong impression about who's really in charge here. You know what I mean. You understand I had to ask." The French Quarter. Rebecca walked through the quarter, talking on her cell phone, to Klaus who was in the plantation basement. "Niklaus, for the love of Mary Magdalene, how long does it take to ask a simple question?" she asked. "Much longer than you'd think," considering the answer was, as expected, no. "Marcel's man, Thierry, is suspicious. He thinks you killed 10 Nightwalkers." Klaus answered. "Well, that's a lie. I only killed 8. Should I make Thierry the 9th? Rebecca said. "Marcel is playing friendly. We can't kill the favorite son, or he'll catch on to us." Klaus replied. "So, war it is, then." Rebecca said. "Indeed. Do you know what to do with the witch?" Klaus asked. "I believe I do," Rebecca said, stopping in front of a store. "Good. You manage Sophie Devereaux. I'll take care of the next step," Klaus said before he hung up the phone and turned to the vampire Joshua, who was minding Klaus' vampire hostage. "I ordered you to drain him of blood. What's taking so long?" he asked. "Sorry. I'm not, like, medieval torture expert guy," Josh said before Klaus using his super speed grab a pitchfork and impaled the vampire. "What did he do to you, anyway? It's not about what he did. It's about what he's going to do when we're done here, which is whatever I want him to, just like you. For example, drive this through his torso." Klaus, having removed the pitchfork from the vampire, compelled Joshua and handed the weapon to him, and Josh immediately obeyed. Joshua, realizing what he did, said, "That is crazy. I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway." Klaus with a smug grin said, "It's called mind compulsion. Vampires can compel humans. Originals, like my siblings and I, can also compel vampires, and no one can compel originals. You following?" Josh nodded. "Good. That is how a brand new Nightwalker such as yourself is here doing my bidding with no one the wiser." "But I never had my guts drained out of me," Josh said. "Yes. That, young Joshua, is because I got to you before you had even a drop of herbal vervain in your system. You see, it prevents compulsion. Marcel has had his whole crew taking it since I returned to town, and that is why our friend here needs to be bled dry a bit, so I can compel him to follow my every command. And with my brother currently in captivity awaiting rescue, we can't afford to be gentle about it, can we?" Klaus said as he took the pitchfork back and drove it through the vampire's torso and twisted it in. The French Quarter Jardin Gris. Rebecca waited outside the shop and turned to greet Sophie, who was approaching on the sidewalk. "Oh, so glad you could make it. Elijah only lies daggered and rotting whilst you dilly-dally. You're lucky I came at all. What do you want?" Sophie said. Haley was attacked last night by Marcel's crew because somebody told him there was a werewolf in the quarter. She only made one stop. Whoever saw her here ratted her out. Watch and learn. Rebecca replied before she and Sophie walked into the store, but if she would have stayed for a second or two she would have saw someone she wanted to see since she was undaggered. Walking down the street in a crimson silk muscle shirt, black jeans, and a pair of red Jordans, the man had spiky golden hair, and 3 whisker marks on both his cheeks. He had also had deep blue eyes. This was Naruto Uzumaki, the true original hybrid. Naruto had a tattoo on his shoulder of a sun and moon with fangs connecting the two of them, the hybrid symbol on the cave wall from season 3, the name Rebecca tattooed on his forearm, and he wore a green crystal around his neck. Naruto looked around for a moment before he crossed the street just in time to run into Sabine, who was giving a tour to the tourists. "Hello, Sabine," he greeted, getting her attention as the tourists entered a shop to look around. Sabine turned around to see someone she hoped never to see again. Naruto felt the wave of fear flowing off Sabine, but he paid it no mind. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" Sabine asked. "I haven't heard from my daughter in a couple of months and I'm worried, so please point me in her direction and I'll be on my way," Naruto said with a small smile. "I don't know where she is," Sabine replied, causing Naruto to frown. "Then where is Cynthia?" Naruto asked. "She died 8 months ago," Sabine said, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow. "And none of you ancestral witches saw fit to call me and tell me my daughter's mother is dead," Naruto growled, taking a step forward, causing Sabine to back up. But before he could do anything, the tourists exited the store. "This isn't over," he growled before he turned around and walked away, heading to Rousseau's to get a drink, before he heard some surprising information from a passing vampire. "Marcel, huh," Naruto muttered. "I think I'll go say hello," he thought as he walked to the bar. Mikhailson Mansion. Haley was eavesdropping from the hallway, as Sophie, Rebecca, and Klaus were arguing behind a closed door. "Are you out of your mind?" "No way." Rebecca paced in front of the sitting Sophie. "It's very simple. We need you to perform a teeny tiny locator spell to help us find our brother. Witches who practice magic in this town get caught, and they get killed," Sophie replied. "Yes, about that. It seems you left out a crucial detail when we made our deal. Marcel's secret weapon, the way he knows when a witch is using magic," Klaus said as he sat down. Rebecca, who also sat down, said, "Girl about yay high, cute as a button, anger issues." Sophie seemed to be in shock before she asked, "Davina, where have you seen her?" "I don't know. The little brat erased my memory right after she threw me out a window with her bloody mind," Rebecca answered. "Let me cut to the chase. Davina has Elijah. You witches, I assume, want to get Davina away from Marcel. We don't know where she is. Ergo, we need magic," Klaus said with a smirk. "Davina would sense it," Sophie said. Rebecca sat up and said, "Unless, of course, another witch, say, a traitor to the cause, Katie for example, was to perform much more powerful magic at the same time. That would create a smokescreen, concealing your very small spell from Davina." Sophie looked at them, appalled for what they were suggesting. "Katie doesn't deserve to die." Klaus angrily slammed his hands on the table and stood up, before he walked around the table and sat down in front of Sophie. "Sophie Devereaux, you're in no position to be so principled. You can't win a war without a few strategic losses, no matter how regrettable they may be. How many times have the vampires been one step ahead, known something they shouldn't? Your sister, executed in the public square for practicing magic, who knew she'd be caught? Did she even attempt to flee?" Sophie bitterly replied. "She was caught hiding in a cargo hold of a freighter before it set sail down the Mississippi." "And who, pray tell, of Marcel's valued inner circle manages his business at the docks?" Klaus said. "Katie's boyfriend, Thierry," Sophie said with a sigh. "The abattoir. Thierry played his trumpet in the courtyard. Klaus and Marcel watched from the balcony." Klaus turned to Marcel and said, "You're right. He's good." Marcel smirked and replied, "Right. Music man, I call him. Ladies love him, but he's spoken for. He knocks around with this pretty little witch, Says he loves her, but I don't know. Your brightest soldier is fraternizing with your enemy, and you don't care. Klaus asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, of course I care, but Thierry is a grown man. He makes his own choices, and I get some good intel. Besides, he's not gonna do anything to jeopardize what we're doing here. I mean, check this out. A vampire hosting a ritzy charity event. We have a community here. No one's gonna mess that up. Marcel said, and despite his ambition, Klaus had to agree. Still, you don't want the witches to get too bold, given that a witch's tip about a werewolf in town led to the disappearance of your nightwalkers. I'm sure you've considered the possibility that it could have been a trap. Klaus said to Marcel, who frowned before he smiled. Well, maybe I'll send a little message. Marcel turned and shouted, Thierry. Take a team of nightwalkers to the cauldron tonight, do a little rousting. Oh, and Thierry. Make it nasty. With Naruto. Naruto was just outside the quarter at a manor, looking up at the large house with a look of remembrance as Rebecca's happy face flashed in his mind. Naruto sighed and walked inside the house to see dust everywhere. Turning his head, Naruto paid no mind to the 18 plumes of smoke that suddenly appeared and subsided to show 18 clones. Clean up the manor, and set up a room for our little princess for when I find her. Naruto ordered his clones, who immediately set out to do their tasks. Walking to a photo of him and Rebecca, Naruto released his energy, and immediately the sound of rats and bugs of all kind can be heard scurrying out of the manor. This will be our home once more, Becca, this I promise you. Almost 100 years, we've been apart, it's time to change that. Abattoir. Marcel watched from the balcony as the party crew were getting everything ready. So it's true. A voice suddenly said from behind him and his daywalkers, causing them immediately to turn around to see eyes glowing in the shadows. Picture how wolves' eyes glow in the dark, and out stepped Naruto. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Marcel spoke. Naruto Uzumaki. Why so formal? I thought we were closer than that. Naruto said before he looked around. Apparently not. Show some respect. One of the daywalkers said. Marcel's eyes widened. Jerry. He called out in warning. Jerry looked to Marcel and said, I'm sorry boss, but these originals seem to think they don't need to show you respect. Jerry walked up to Naruto and poked him in the chest, causing Naruto to look down at where the contact took place. Don't talk to the boss like you're his equal, mutt. Show him some respect. Naruto looked up into Jerry's eyes, before he looked over Jerry's shoulder into Marcel's eyes and smirked, before he said, he's right, I should show you some respect. And as an apology, I'll show you the technique I was working on back then. No, Marcel yelled, but a glance from Naruto sent him and his crew to the ground, paralyzed with the exception of Jerry, who looked around in shock before he froze up, and groaned as he looked to Naruto, who had his hand raised toward him. Stop! Marcel shouted, trying to force himself up off the ground. Relax, Marcellus. I'm not going to kill him, hopefully. Naruto said before he brought his hand toward his body, and Jerry began groaning in pain, getting everyone's attention, and they saw blood flowing from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, before they started gushing out in waves before it stopped and Jerry desiccated, before everyone's eyes. Naruto smirked before he looked to the blood and clenched his fist before the blood faded away like mist. Naruto looked to Marcel's friends to see fear on their faces. I dropped by to say, hi, but it looks like it's a bad time, so I'll see you at your party, Marcel. Marcel and his guys stood up as Naruto vanished in a swirl of fire, before they went to Jerry, thinking he was dead, before they heard him groan. What the shell was that? Diego asked Marcel. That man is 100 times worse than Klaus, be careful around him. Marcel said. Don't antagonize him. 2 hours later. With Klaus. Klaus sat at a desk perusing some papers when his phone started buzzing. Answering it, he said, little sister. Rebecca, who was at Rousseau's, said, well, brother, I believe I've made certain Marcel will be properly distracted tonight. Dare I ask? Klaus asked. Let's just say his attention will not be on us. I did my bit. What are you doing to ensure Elijah's safe return? Rebecca asked. Currently, I'm preparing insurance against the tender-hearted. Klaus said. Meaning? Rebecca asked. We need proper motivation for Katie to cast a powerful spell tonight. I'm creating that motivation. Marcel has ordered a rousting of the witches. Klaus said. At the cauldron, vampires jumped from the balconies causing mayhem while the witches in attendance screamed in response. And I, in turn, have arranged for things to go tragically wrong. Klaus said. Back at the cauldron, the vampires continued to upturn tables and destroy anything they could get their hands on, while the witches screamed. Thierry snuck off through a back door into Jardin Gris. His girlfriend Katie was hiding behind a wall peeking around it before she saw him and ran to greet him with a hug and kiss. Hey, what's happening out there? Katie asked. Oh, it's Klaus. He's convinced Marcel that the witches are planning to make a move against him. Marcel wants us to send a message. Thierry said before he knocked over some shelves, looking apologetic. And if he thought I was playing favorites because I'm in love with a witch. Hearing what he said, Katie interrupted Thierry and said, say that again. Thierry smiled and said, I love you, Katie. And all this is gonna be okay, I promise, before he kissed her. Klaus continued to speak. Marcel may not be concerned with Thierry's romantic entanglements. Thierry walked out of the Jardin Gris, bumping into the vampire Klaus tortured and compelled. I already got that one. Thierry said and walked away. The vampire went into the shop anyway. But there are other crimes which he'll be less inclined to so easily forgive. Thierry was talking to a vampire when he heard screaming from inside the Jardin Gris. He turned to see the vampire dragging Katie outside, biting her neck as she screamed. Leave her alone. Thierry shouted, not giving the vampire time to obey his order. He sped over and threw him off of Katie. Get off. He shouted. Before he threw the vampire across the courtyard, the vampire smashed onto a table. Thierry ran over to him, grabbed a broken table leg, and used it to stake the vampire, killing him. The courtyard went silent, and the other vampires circled around the scene of the crime. Killing a vampire, for example. That would be unforgivable. If Katie hopes to save her one true love from Marcel's punishment, well, a rescue mission like that will require something positively magical. But then, what's worth dying for, if not love? At the cauldron, Katie stared at Thierry, horrified, and Thierry himself looked like he knew the consequences will be dire. The abattoir, masquerade galas. Rebecca and Klaus entered the party, arm in arm, taking in the dark, wild atmosphere. Acrobats perform, dancers handle exotic animals, and confetti falls glittering upon the party guests. Well, this certainly is a fitting backdrop for tonight's events, I must say. And pray tell, what events are you talking about? A voice said behind them, causing them to turn around to see a man with a black and red mask on his face. Picture Spawn, only the mask is black and red. Worried that they may have been found out, Klaus and Rebecca acted quickly and grabbed the man and sped away from the party unseen by anyone. Alley. The brother and sister duo slammed the unknown man into the alley wall before Klaus attempted to pull the man's heart out, but the man's hand gripped his before it could penetrate his chest, and Klaus was shocked when he couldn't overpower the man, before he groaned in pain as the bones in the hand were crushed before he was launched back away from the man. Well, that was unnecessary. The man said as he dusted his black suit off. As Klaus stood up, as he and Rebecca watched the man warily. If he was able to overpower Klaus, he was not to be taken lightly. So I'm guessing by how you both grabbed me and brought me here to kill me, you don't want Marcel knowing of your potential betrayal. So I want one thing. And what is that? Klaus asked, already visualizing how he was going to kill this guy. A dance with your lovely sister. The man said, shocking both the originals. What? They both asked, speechless. That's all I want in exchange for my silence. The man said with a hidden smile. Rebecca and Klaus looked at each other before Rebecca nodded, fine. But only one dance, she said. Great, I'll be waiting for you at the party. The man said before he started to walk away. Wait, who are you? Klaus asked, causing the man to stop and sigh almost as if he was disappointed. I would expect after 900 years together, my wife, and my baby brother, would recognize my voice. The man said. Klaus and Rebecca gasped when they heard what he said. Hesitantly Rebecca took a step forward, and Naruto. She asked hopefully, only for the man to turn her and remain silent. Rebecca walked up and grabbed the bottom of the man's mask as he tilted his head up. Licking her lips, Rebecca pulled the mask up, and she and Klaus gasped when they saw the whisker marks, and Rebecca immediately snatched the mask off Naruto's head. With tearful eyes, Rebecca slammed her lips into his before she pulled back after a moment and hugged him, smiling while also crying. Naruto smiled as he hugged his wife, before he looked over to Klaus, who was also smiling. Pulling away, Naruto walked over to Klaus, and pulled him into a brotherly hug as well. Pulling away, Naruto looked at Rebecca and Klaus. I miss the both of you, dearly. Where's Elijah? Marcel has him. We came up with a plan to get him back, and if we're going to do it, we have to get back to the party. Klaus said, getting a nod from Naruto. I'll help in any way I can so that we can reclaim the city, but first I need to find my daughter. Naruto said. You had a child? Klaus asked as he and Rebecca looked at Naruto in surprise. When we were separated in 1919, I searched for you all, but I didn't have any luck. I thought Michael had succeeded. I hunted him down to get revenge, but he was sealed up in some tomb, so with nothing to keep my emotions in check, I went on a killing spree. I drank my fill of blood and alcohol, and one day I woke up with a woman beside me, and weeks later she found me and told me she was pregnant. Naruto said, looking up to the crescent moon. It turned out she was a New Orleans witch, away from home so she can experience a normal life. I managed to talk her into staying till the baby was born. For 16 years I've been able to take care of my daughter every summer. She's all that held me together. If anything has happened to her, I will turn New Orleans into a wasteland. Naruto said, looking at them with his hybrid features on full blast. Masquerade galas. Naruto, Rebecca and Klaus entered the party smiling, before Rebecca and Klaus spotted Cammy as she entered the party, wearing white angel's wings and a vintage white beaded dress. Rebecca looked pleased, but Klaus' smile fell. What's she doing here? Klaus asked his sister. What better way to distract Marcel than to put his very human, new girl in a room chock full of vampires? Rebecca said before she crossed the room to speak with Cammy. Hello, darling. You look precious. Marcel noticed Cammy's arrival from a balcony above, causing him to frown. This party is ridiculous, but I think I'm unintelligible with this dress. Cammy said before she made eye contact with Klaus, who was talking to Naruto, smiling. Is he your infamous one true love? Cammy asked, referring to the conversation she and Rebecca had earlier that day. Klaus and Naruto walked up as Klaus spoke. He's the brother, actually, and my sister is right. You do look stunning. Clean up pretty well yourself. Cammy said. Well, don't be fooled, love. I'm the devil in disguise. Klaus said, smiling, which Cammy returned. Cammy, this is my one true love, Naruto. Rebecca introduced. Nice to meet you. Naruto said, shaking Cammy's hand. Nice to meet you too. Cammy replied. Excuse us. Naruto said, taking Rebecca's hand and leading her to the bar. Shall we? Klaus asked, extending his arm. Cammy, smiling, said, okay. As she took his arm. Naruto and Rebecca arrived at the bar. Scotch, please. He said before turning to Rebecca. So, who've you been? Well, in the 20s, Klaus daggered me. For 90 years, when I awoke I went to Mystic Falls. My mother was revived and she conspired to kill me and my siblings, then I tried to find the cure. I almost had it, but I was failed. Rebecca said. Naruto looked at her for a moment before he made to go toward Klaus, but Rebecca stopped him. Hey, Naruto, it's okay. Grabbing him by the arm. It's not okay, Rebecca. I told him if he ever even attempted to dagger you, I'll give him such a beating, that'll take him months to recover from. Naruto said, getting a smile from Rebecca. It doesn't matter anymore. With you back in my life, everything will be okay. Rebecca said, placing a chaste kiss on her husband's lips. Naruto smiled at Rebecca before he sensed someone behind him. Hello, Marcellus. He said, looking over his shoulder. At Marcel, how's Jerry? He's better. Marcel said. That's good. Naruto replied with a nod. I'm impressed with what you did with the city, especially with the most recent tragedy. Marcel smiled slightly, hearing the praise from a man he looked up to, and has helped him a lot in his life. Thank you, he said gratefully. Moments later, Cammy and Marcel danced together as Naruto. Rebecca and Klaus watched them. So you tried to kill her last night. Then invited her here to distract Marcel. Naruto said. It's working perfectly, isn't it? Rebecca asked, smiling. Can't argue with that. Naruto replied before he grabbed Rebecca's hand and pulled her onto the dance floor. I thought you said you were in community work. Cammy said. Community fundraising. Throw a party. Folks open their wallets. It's kind of my thing. Guess I'm what you call a necessary evil, but enough about that. I just want to be right here with you. Diego entered the courtyard, and saw Marcel dancing with Cammy, while their faces neared each other, but Diego interrupted them and whispered in Marcel's ear, while Rebecca and Naruto saw what was happening, and Rebecca whispered in Naruto's ear, that's my cue to leave. Peeking Naruto on his lips, she walked away, as Naruto walked over to Klaus and ordered a drink. Why are you doing this? We both know what Marcel means to you. Naruto whispered. He took what we built, stole it from us. I'll take back the city and raise my child here, and give him or her the childhood I always wanted, and will make sure that I'm a better father than Michael ever was. Klaus said, looking to Naruto, who nodded and smirked. I always have your back, Nick. That hasn't changed. Naruto said, causing Klaus to smile at him and nod slightly as he and Naruto turned to look at Marcel, who was barely controlling his anger, while listening to Diego tell him the full story of what happened at the cauldron. Marcel, seeing Thierry enter, turned to Cammy and said, Excuse me. Before he walked over to Thierry and grabbed him by the throat, pushing him away from the main party, while Cammy watched, her eyebrows knitting together. What the hell did you do? Marcel asked before Diego interfered. Whoa, not here. No, not here, Diego said, pulling Marcel back, while Klaus smiled. Cammy watched, disquiet paralyzing her features. The cemetery. A sobbing Katie talked with Sophie inside a candlelit burial chamber. I know you think he's a monster. Katie sobbed. It doesn't matter what I think. Thierry killed another vampire. He broke Marcel's biggest rule. You'll never see him again, unless we do something. Sophie said. We? Katie asked, perplexed. I want to save our people. You want to save Thierry? There's only one way we can do both. Sophie said, grabbing Katie's hands. A little while later, Katie and Sophie sat out in the cemetery, arranging items for a ritual. Before Sophie looked to Katie, you ready? Katie began by sprinkling sand over their tableau. Unknown attic. Whispering voices grew louder. Davina thrashed, asleep in her bed but disturbed by the magic she could sense, before she suddenly sat up. Marcel. Something's coming, she said before she got out her bed and walked over to her easel, and immediately started to draw on the paper madly for several seconds, then stopped. Magic. The abattoir. Masquerade Gala. Marcel and his guys had moved to the balcony above the party. I want to hear your side of it. Marcel said. Hey, Marcel, come on, Thierry started. Your version. Go. Marcel interrupted with a order. We were tossing the cauldron. This guy, some nightwalker, he attacked Katie for no reason. Thierry surmised. His name was Max. I turned him, and as far as reasons go, he doesn't need one. She was a witch. He was a vampire. Now he's dead. Marcel said with his eyes narrowed. Cammy watched them from below. Thierry took a deep breath. I didn't mean for it to happen. He said. You broke my most important rule. Damn it, how long we been friends? 70 years. Marcel asked, getting a nod from Thierry. I turned you into something that would never die. I gave you a gift. And I have been loyal to you all this time, and I still am. I'm still your friend, Marcel. I swear, that hasn't changed. Thierry said. Down below, Cammy continued to watch with a look of apprehension, as Klaus joined her. Are you all right, love? He asked. After a moment of silence, Cammy spoke. He's got a temper, doesn't he? I guess this is the moment I remember I know better. Cammy walked away sadly, before Joshua walked up to Klaus, standing slightly behind him. Klaus reached into his coat's inner pocket, and withdrew a folded piece of paper and handed it to Joshua, who pocketed it and walked away. Klaus watched the balcony as Joshua appeared next to Marcel and handed him the paper. We found this at his girl's place. Josh said. Marcel looked at it. It appeared to be a spell written out. Marcel turned back to Thierry, betrayal shining in his eyes. Still my friend, huh? That's funny because it looks to me like that little witch of yours got her hands on a spell that I keep locked away. Marcel, I have never seen that. Thierry tried to defend himself, but Marcel was on a roll. Shut up. I see on your hand, you still have the daylight ring I gave you. So what would you need with the recipe for making new ones? Unless maybe you and Katie were gonna go off and start a little kingdom of your own. Marcel asked rhetorically. Marcel, no, Thierry said. Here's a lesson in friendship. Friends don't lie to me, they don't break my rules, and they do not steal what is mine. Marcel shouted, before he turned and shoved the paper into Joshua's chest and took a moment to breathe, before he turned back to Thierry. Oh. For the crime of murdering one of his own, I sentence Thierry Vancher to 100 years in the garden. Thierry looked at Marcel in shock, while down below Klaus and Naruto who were listening smirked, and it begins. Klaus said. The cemetery. Sophie was still at the cemetery, preparing her locator spell, when Rebecca appeared, causing Sophie to look up when she heard her. You're doing the right thing. It's the only way to find Elijah. Rebecca said. Sophie turned back to her map, and said, I'm doing what I have to do. Sophie then started chanting while holding Elijah's pocket watch over the map. The abattoir, masquerade gala. Klaus and Naruto watched as more of Marcel's men lead Thierry out of the party and out onto the street, where a small crowd of more vampires watched Katie approach from down the street, chanting. The hybrids watched the event unfold from a window above. Attic. Davina was madly scribbling on her easel as she drew Katie. With Marcel. The vampires saw Katie and Thierry yelled, Katie, no. Like clockwork. Naruto said just as Katie waved her arm and a lamp's light exploded, while all the vampires grabbed at their heads, falling down in pain. Marcel alone rose back up to face Katie, but she smashed another light with her magic and Marcel went down again. Cemetery. Sophie continued to chant for her spell, as Rebecca urged her on, hurry. With Katie. Marcel rose again, but Katie used magic to break his bones, and he fell again shouting in pain. Attic. Davina sensing that Marcel was in pain shouted, no. Before she lifted her hands slowly. With Katie. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly when he sensed magic surround Marcel as he slowly rose while Katie watched astonished. You're here to save your man. Well, come on, little girl. Marcel said before he charged at her with a growl, only for Katie to come out of her stupor and break his bones again, sending him to the ground groaning in pain, while in her room fell as well with a shout of pain. Naruto, seeing Katie reach behind her, spoke to Klaus. You better move now, or she'll kill your son. Katie lifted a wooden stake above Marcel. Die, you son of a bitch. She spat with a lot of venom in her voice. No, Katie, don't. Thierry shouted while still on the ground in pain. Klaus, seeing Katie about to stake Marcel, sped in and snapped Katie's neck, causing her to fall to ground dead. The cemetery. Sophie suddenly stopped her spell. Something's wrong. Katie's magic stopped. I can keep going, she said, getting ready to continue her spell. You can't. She'll sense it. Rebecca protested. No, I can find Davina. I just need another moment. Sophie said, about to start. Rebecca, seeing how stubborn she was being, grabbed the map with the black sand on top of it that Sophie was using and threw it aside. Sophie stood up and turned to Rebecca, who said, you may be willing to die to get your witch back, but Haley and the baby will die with you. Elijah will never forgive us, and rescuing him will be for nothing. It's over. We failed. With vampires. As the vampires took deep breaths, Thierry crawled over to Katie's body. No. Katie. No, 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 no. He said as he sobbed over her body, cradling it. Marcel stood up watching him before he looked to Klaus and nodded, while Klaus smirked. The garden. Thierry stood chained to a wall in some underground room, while Marcel stood across from him. Just tell me this. Was she worth it? Marcel asked. I loved her. Thierry said, before Marcel, using his super speed, drove an iron stake into Thierry's gut, causing him to groan in pain, before Marcel held out a wooden mallet and a man appeared taking it. "Seal him up. And let him rot," Marcel said, getting a nod from the man before he started to lay bricks over wet cement, clearly intending to build a wall to encase Thierry, like so many before him. Davina's room. Davina was kneeling at Elijah's open casket, before she heard the door open and looked up to see Marcel enter, before she ran to hug him. "You're okay. I was so worried." Marcel, pulling back from the hug, said, "Thank you. Whatever you did, I felt it. You helped me." "It was the old ones, wasn't it?" Davina asked. "Actually, Klaus is the one that saved me tonight," Marcel said, catching Davina by surprise. "I'm gonna make things right, starting off by giving him his brother back," he said before he walked toward the coffin. Davina turned toward him. "No," she protested. "What?" "Davina," Marcel started. "No, you said the old ones were dangerous. I won't give him back until I know how to kill them," Davina interrupted. Marcel looked from Davina to Elijah, before he nodded. "Fine, but you have to hurry." Okay, I'll try," Davina said before she closed the coffin as Marcel left. Davina sighed and went over to her easel, and got prepared to draw something when she heard a voice speak from behind her. "An attic." Davina turned around to see a man with his back turned to her by Elijah's coffin. "Now why would you be up here?" When Davina saw the man turn around, she gasped and dropped her pencil. "Daddy?" she asked in shock, getting a smile from Naruto. "Hey princess," Naruto said before Davina darted over to him and hugged him. "I was so worried about you," he said before he pulled back and asked, "Why are you up here? You should have called me." Davina looked up at him before she told him the story of how she was used as a harvest girl, and the witches now plan to find you and kill you. "So that's why they brought Niklas back. You have to give Elijah back," Naruto said, controlling his temper, since he didn't want Davina to ever see him like that. "No," Marcel said, "that they were dangerous." Davina said, "He's technically your uncle. Elijah cares about family. He won't hurt you," Naruto said. "But he'll hurt Marcel," Davina replied, and Naruto couldn't disagree with that, as Marcel and Elijah's relationship still hasn't fully recovered. "Once I know how to hurt them, then I'll give him back," Davina said. Naruto sighed and nodded reluctantly before he crouched down by the coffin. "I know you can hear me, Elijah. Davina is not to be harmed. I'll protect the family till you're awake. I promise," Naruto said before he placed his hand on the coffin and used a minor gravity pull centered around the dagger to pull it out and lowered it back inside. Turning to his daughter, Naruto said, "Davina, I'm going to trust you on this. I'll handle the witches, but under no circumstances are you to tell Marcel about our relationship to each other. Why? You're a witch, vampire, and a werewolf. The seal I placed on you will continue to suppress your vampire and wolf side till your 21st birthday. That makes you a person of extraordinary power, and a perfect weapon. With your heritage a secret, I can at least trust that Marcel won't force you to do something against your will," Naruto said. "I promise, Daddy." Davina nodded before she went over and hugged him. "I love you, Daddy. I'm happy you're here." "I love you too, so much. I'll protect you no matter what, even against Klaus," Naruto said, kissing the top of Davina's head, while she smiled happily, feeling even more safe with her dad here, someone she knew loved her unconditionally. The cemetery. Katie's body lied prepared for her final rites, as Sophie waved a smoking bundle of herbs over her body. Other witches, including Agnes and Sabine, stood around her. "I told you no good would come from this unholy alliance of yours. At least I'm doing something." "What about you?" Sophie retorted before she left. "Sabine, tell them what you saw," Agnes said. "It's the girl, the wolf. Her child will bring death to all witches," Sabine said, getting murmurs from those around her. "That's not all," she said, getting everyone's attention again. "Naruto Uzumaki has returned to the quarter." Horrified gasps and expressions filled the cemetery, as their own personal boogeyman has returned. Flashback. 1835, New Orleans. A full moon shined brightly in the night sky. Everything was peaceful while inside the plantation, the mayor was elated he had shot his bastard son, and the beast had probably bled out, before one of the demons found him to heal him. Unknown to the mayor, two figures were approaching his home. Surround the house, any human leaves kill them. Naruto ordered before 10 wolves walked out the shadows of the woods, before they took their positions around the plantation. You sure we should be here? A voice asked behind Naruto, who sighed and looked back at Marcel, who looked around nervous. Klaus said I should be the better man, and leave him alone. Klaus told you that, because that's a lesson a father should teach his son, but as an older brother, it's my job to help you deal with your enemies. This bastard and anyone else in the plantation deserves what's going to happen tonight. Naruto replied, getting a nod from Marcel. Walking up to the front door, Naruto knocked, and after a few moments the governor's wife opened the door. Before she could get a chance to speak, Naruto grabbed her by the neck and tossed her over his shoulder, snapping her neck as he did so. Before the corpse could reach the ground, a black blur sped from the corner of the plantation and jumped, catching the woman in midair. The blur was a werewolf. Grabbing the corpse in its jaws, the wolf proceeded to drag it into the woods. Come on, Naruto said to Marcel, who was looking towards the woods before he followed Naruto. With a wave of Naruto's hand, the lights in the plantation house went out. Find the old fool, I'll handle everyone else. Marcel nodded before Naruto sped off, and screams of terror soon filled the air. End flashback. Smiling at the fond memory, Naruto looked at the plantation. He had just come from seeing Davina. Stealthily entering the house, Naruto walked through the large house, before he paused in front of a door, sensing a werewolf behind it. Curious, Naruto slid into the room, sticking to the shadows, to see a familiar face he hasn't seen in a while. Haley? Naruto asked. Haley, who was growing frustrated as she hasn't been able to find an English translation to the words Sabine had said earlier while in her trance, looked up, startled, standing up with her laptop ready to bash the intruder's head in with it, only to gasp in shock as Naruto walked out of the shadows. Naruto? Haley asked, putting the laptop down. Hello, little sister, Naruto said as tears welled up in Haley's eyes before Naruto walked over to her and pulled her into a hug that she immediately returned before Naruto pulled back and looked down at Haley's pregnant stomach before he said, Nick's the father. Haley nodded slowly. I'm sorry. For what? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. For getting knocked up. Naruto tucked a lock of her hair behind ear with a smile. There's no need to be sorry, you're going to be a good mom, and I'll always be there for you, he said before kissing her forehead as Haley smiled at him. Moment later, Naruto walked through the house to Rebecca's room. Entering silently, he saw Rebecca's dress on the ground, and heard water running from the bathroom before he silently strode across the room and quietly opened and slipped through the door. Looking through the glass that separated him and his wife, Naruto looked at the body he hasn't seen or touched in 1,000 years. Smiling to himself, Naruto's suit and shoes vanished in a golden yellow flash, the lights making the flash unnoticeable, leaving him completely naked, except for the necklace around his neck. Naruto walked towards the shower and stepped inside. Rebecca was still unaware to him, as her back was to him, as well as his ability to hide from anyone coming in handy. Naruto smiled lovingly as he stepped closer. In a non-threatening way, Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist, bringing her close to him. She tensed for a moment before relaxing as she saw Naruto's golden blonde hair. Naruto kissed her shoulder, then up her neck. She bit her lip as he began to pull and nip at her ear. You didn't think after almost a century apart that you would be spending the night alone, did you? Naruto whispered in her ear, and she turned in his arms, gazing into his eyes. It never crossed my mind, Rebecca said as her eyes drifted down to his lips before back to his eyes. I've missed you, terribly, she whispered. As of you, Naruto said before the two met in a kiss that was filled with love, passion, need and want. Neither felt in the mood for foreplay, and without breaking their intense lip lock, Naruto picked Rebecca up and she wrapped her legs around him. Grabbing onto his wet dick, Naruto positioned it at her entrance and he slowly slid into her, making her moan into the kiss. He started thrusting as she started bouncing, gyrating and grinding. With her back against the wall, Rebecca began grabbing onto his hair, her arms wrapped around his neck. His hands had lowered down to her ass, allowing him to squeeze and slap it to his heart's content. And as this continued to go on, they continued to ravage each other's mouth, and ignoring the water falling atop of them. Rebecca pulled away from Naruto's mouth and gave an authentic moan. Naruto bit down softly on her ear and pulled down, making her give another. After a few minutes of continuous thrusting, Rebecca got down from Naruto and turned around, her ass sticking out for him. Grabbing onto her waist, Naruto eased the tip in before he slammed it in, causing Rebecca to moan even louder, before she started to gyrate her ass on his pelvis while he humped and slammed against her like there was no tomorrow. The blonde would give long slow strokes, dipping down a bit before bringing it back up, making her curse from pleasure. Then sometimes he would simply pound against her fat ass as he smacked it. Before Naruto allowed his hybrid features to surface, before he suppressed his wolf's side causing his red eyes to return to their natural blue, and the sclera to change from black to their blood red color, as well as his fangs to shorten slightly. As Naruto continued slamming against her, Rebecca moaned louder as she felt him sink his fangs into her neck. Reaching down, Rebecca grabbed one of his hands and removed it from her breast before she sunk her fangs into his wrist as his remaining hand continued to roughly fondle and pulled her sensitive nipple. Naruto then slowed down a bit, giving into his long strokes, making Rebecca even wetter. Naruto slammed into her even harder, hitting her womb. This caused Rebecca to give a light scream of pleasure and her tongue to hang out of her mouth filled with her blood, as her eyes filled with lust. Yes. 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 She started to shout as Naruto was not holding back. The blonde himself was getting spurred on by Rebecca's shouts of pleasure like he always used to. It wasn't long till the familiar sensation of his inevitable eruption, before Naruto gave one more long hard slam to Rebecca. Naruto allowed himself to come within her walls and she gave a silent scream of pleasure as she felt Naruto's dick expand a bit from coming. Not to mention the heat and amount of his cum flooding her pussy. This caused the girl to come herself. Naruto stayed in his position, emptying out his load. As he did this, he gave small short thrusts before he pulled out, allowing a stream of cum to pour out her pussy. The former shinobi took a deep calming breath before he noticed Rebecca licking his dick clean from both of their juices before the water washed it off. He gave a small moan as the girl sucked in her cheeks, swirling her tongue around the tip. Dropping to his knees in front of her, Naruto smiled at her. "I love you." "And I you," Rebecca replied before she pulled Naruto into a kiss. Next day, Naruto stood across from Klaus. The both of them were in the backyard. Rebecca and Haley watched from house. Naruto had awoke Klaus this morning for a sparring session. "So how do you know Naruto?" Rebecca asked Haley. "After I was kicked out of my adoptive parents' home, I was alone, but there was this feeling that led me to him. It's hard to explain, but it was like I knew I belonged with him. He took me in, and raised me as his little sister, teaching me the ways of a werewolf." Haley said, looking at Naruto with a smile. "Your blood led you to him," Rebecca said, causing Haley to turn to her. Before Rebecca motioned over to Naruto. "Naruto was given to my parents by the god Odin. But before he was given to them, he was given a wolf gene. He became the alpha of the Labanere family when he was 17. He's ruled the pack for 1,000 years, before he left them in charge of New Orleans." "He turned them into hybrids?" Haley asked. "No, he wouldn't force a wolf to discard their nature, so he earned their respect as a wolf." "I'm confused. Your father hated Klaus cause he was a werewolf, and the son of another man, so why didn't he hate Naruto as well?" Rebecca smiled. "Naruto was everything my father wanted in a son. He was basically a gift from our most revered god, Odin. Michael loved Naruto more than his own biological sons, a man who bore a resemblance to him, strong, kind, fearless, a warrior, and add the fact that he was a natural-born leader. The final nail in the coffin was when Naruto activated his wolf ability, protecting me and my mother. He learned to resist the transformation." "Is such a thing possible?" Haley asked in shock, and awe, only for Rebecca to shrug. "Naruto did it." Word had spread to the wolves of the village that Naruto was able to resist the change, before other packs flooded in, looking to learn how Naruto was able to achieve the feat. But Naruto didn't teach them. He saw the hatred some packs held, but when he got to the Crescent Clan, he saw how they held no hatred for other packs, they only wanted unity between everyone, but they would fight to protect themselves, so Naruto decided to join their pack. Naruto would become the red-eyed alpha, an alpha among alphas. Rebecca said, while Haley nodded knowing Naruto's nickname. 2 years before my family was turned into vampires, while on a hunt Naruto was blindsided by a witch, who used her magic to subdue him. She believed that since Naruto was a being of nature he would only bring power to the witch community. So she performed the spell that turned him into a vampire. Haley paid rapt attention learning more about her big brother figure. My mother performed a locator spell. Where we found him, we were horrified when we saw him with a sword through his chest, and a dagger through his neck. My father and brothers moved to attack, but the witch subdued them very easily, before she did the same with me and my mother. Flashback. Rebecca and Esther were forced to the wall, along with the men of their family, forced to watch as the elderly witch chanted over the corpse of Naruto. Michael growled as he tried to move, as he looked to Naruto's body and a tear streamed down his cheeks. I don't wish death on this man. You wench, you already killed him. Michael yelled enraged. Why would I kill nature given life? The witch asked. What are you talking about? Elijah asked. The witch with her smirk turned to Esther and Cole. Don't tell me you two haven't sensed it. She asked. Nature surrounds the young one, as if it makes up his very soul. He's the one who will bring great things to the witch community. I will make sure this beautiful creature remains in the world of the living forever. Everyone watched as the witch took the dagger from Naruto's throat. Esther, do something. Stop her. Michael yelled. The witch laughed loudly. She's years too late to stop me. If she'd never stopped practicing she might have posed a challenge, like her parents did. Esther looked at the witch in shock, before she focused on her face, recalling a memory she kept buried. Aunt Emma, Esther whispered, you killed my mother and father. She yelled as her struggling began anew. That's right, that's the curse of our family, we sisters always seem to turn on each other. Emma said with a shrug as Esther kept struggling and screaming. Oh, shut up, be glad that I'm trying to appease the spirits or I would have killed each of you already. Emma took the dagger and proceeded to cut her arm from the wrist to the elbow, before she allowed the blood to fall on Naruto's lips, chin, and neck. Quickly Emma began to chant. The blood lengthened, to cover his entire body, before the sword shot out of his chest, and the blood seemed to get absorbed into Naruto's skin. When the last of the blood disappeared into his skin, a small shockwave shot out from his body as Emma healed her wound before she turned to the Mikhailson family and seemed to think about something. I've changed my mind, your continued existence will only distract young Naruto from his destiny. Everyone's eyes widened as Emma used her magic to pick up each of the men's swords, as well as Naruto's dagger and the sword that was in his chest. Unknown to Emma, Naruto's eyes opened. Any last words? Emma asked, smiling wickedly as she prepared to shoot the weapons at her niece and her family. Die. A voice whispered behind her, before a hand tore through her chest, causing everyone to gasp. The hand was withdrawn and Emma fell to the ground, allowing everyone to see Naruto breathing deeply as they stood up slowly. Son, are you okay? Michael asked. Naruto, who was looking down at his bloody hand, looked up to his family, causing them to gasp as Naruto's eyes were red with 3 lines in them and 3 dots on each line. Naruto smiled before his eyes returned to their original blue and he fell forward unconscious, only for Michael to catch him, and his family to crowd around him. End flashback. Naruto has always protected the family, and when our youngest brother Henrik died he took it hard, before he buried himself into his training. Our mother later used a version of the spell that made him immortal and he taught each of us to use our abilities and to fight. Rebecca said as Haley turned to Naruto and Klaus, who were talking. Do we really have to do this? Klaus asked. Yes, we do. Naruto said. First one to gain 2 knockouts, or deaths wins. Klaus sighed before he shrugged with a cocky smirk on his face, before he and Naruto put up their hands in ready positions. Whenever you're ready. Klaus nodded before he threw a right jab, only for Naruto to dodge to the right, and capitalize with a left hook. Immediately Klaus dropped to the ground unconscious. Holy shit! Haley shouted. Naruto sighed before he tapped Klaus with a lightning-charged finger, waking him up. Klaus groaned as he rubbed his jaw, before he spit out some blood. That's one. Naruto said. Embarrassed, Klaus growled before he and Naruto got into ready positions again, throwing a right, then a left that were both dodge, before Naruto snuck in a jab that nailed Klaus in the chin, before a frustrated Klaus took a wild swing, that Naruto ducked under before he punched Klaus in the ribs twice and spun around a uppercut, before he put some space between him and Klaus. Seeing Klaus' eyes flash golden yellow, Naruto sighed in disappointment. Klaus, growing more frustrated, used his speed to close in on Naruto before he threw a wild right hook that Naruto ducked under, followed by a left hook that Naruto also ducked under, before he sidestepped a uppercut and spun under another left hook. Before Klaus could regain his stance, Naruto kicked Klaus in the back of his head with the heel of his shoe, causing Klaus to stumble, before he turned to Naruto, allowing Naruto to see that he has allowed his hybrid features to surface. Klaus charged in ready to take Naruto out, only for Naruto to spin around him, while tripping him up. As Klaus was on his way down, an elbow to the forehead from Naruto caused him to fall to the ground unconscious. Haley and Rebecca could only look on in awe, as Naruto owned Klaus. Klaus got up enraged. Do you know why you lose so easily? Naruto asked. Because you're arrogant. Vampire Klaus knew that I was to be approached with caution and that just throwing punches wouldn't help him, but hybrid Klaus seems to be a arrogant, power-hungry douche. You need to control that, or you're never going to be able to protect your child. Klaus gritted his teeth. You're already on a bad start. You're choosing to stay here, with enemies all around you, not the perfect place to raise a child. What do you know? Klaus yelled angry. You didn't even raise your own daughter, who is still missing, by the way. You're right, but have you forgotten about the baby me and Rebecca brought back with us in 1493? Yeah, the daughter you adopted. You found her in Bulgaria. Klaus said. She was my daughter by blood. Naruto replied, causing Klaus' eyes to widen. Her name was Nadia Petrova Mikhailson. Petrova? Klaus asked with wide eyes. You had a daughter with Katerina. No wonder she was able to run from me for 500 years, you helped her. Of course I did. Naruto said. What are you willing to sacrifice for your child's happiness? Klaus opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't find an answer. He never thought about the sacrifices he would have to make. What would you sacrifice to make sure she was safe? Klaus looked down. Answer me. Naruto shouted as a wolf-like growl was heard coming from him. Anything. Klaus said after a moment before he looked up at Naruto with a determined look in his eyes. I'll do anything to protect her, even risk my wolf side being sealed again. Haley and Rebecca honestly were shocked to hear that from Niklas. This family needs to be united above all else, so I'm going to get Nadia and Katerina to bring them here. You're not going to antagonize her. But she betrayed me, Klaus said. How by wanting to live? Besides, you got what you wanted. You're now a hybrid. You have no reason to hold a grudge. TCH. Klaus looked to Naruto and calmed down, before he nodded. Well, I win, so drinks are on you when I get back. Naruto said with a smirk, causing Klaus to groan. 2 days later. Davina's room. Marcel was leaning over Elijah's body in his coffin, while Davina looked out the window. This sucker's resilient. He's like a cockroach in a suit. Marcel said, causing Davina to glance over to him. Doesn't matter. Time to give ol' Elijah back to Klaus, anyway. You asked me to figure out a way to kill the originals. I'm not done. The silver dagger hurts them, but that's it. Davina said as she walked over to Marcel. Davina, we've been through this. Klaus saved my life. I owe him one. Since he wants his brother back, Marcel started. Tonight's the annual Dauphine Street Music Festival. I wanna go. Please. Davina asked, interrupting Marcel. The whole point of you being up here is so you're never spotted out there. You know who works smack in the middle of Dauphine Street? Sophie Devereaux. Pain in the ass witch, and you know what the witches will do to you if they find you. Marcel said. But you control the witches. Make her go away. Davina replied, only for Marcel to shake his head. Marcel, it's one night. I said. No, Marcel said before he turned to leave. I do anything you say, but sometimes I think you forget what I'm capable of. Did you know I can make someone's blood boil? All I have to do is focus. Davina stared at Marcel, and the hiss of boiling blood was heard as he started to sweat. Marcel, uncomfortable, shifted his jacket before he wiped sweat from his forehead, before he smiled at Davina, who stopped. Fine. We compromise, all right. You going out alone? Too dangerous. But, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine that's going to be there. All right. Nice lady. You two are really gonna hit it off. Davina smiled widely and bounced on her heels. After laying down some rules, Marcel left to get things ready. With Naruto. Naruto awoke with a small yawn, and looked down to see Rebecca and Katerina Petrova aka Catherine Pierce asleep on his chest, stroking their hair. Naruto remembered the confrontation he had when he retrieved Catherine. Flashback. Naruto was in his red Lamborghini Gallardo LP 560-4 Spider, bobbing his head to the music when his song came on, and turned his radio up, and rapped along. YG, I like money. I. Black hoodie, black shoes, black twos. Hit a trip and we bust, now it's bad news, ba ba. Take his bitch to the house cause she mad cool, fuck her. Swam in that bitch pussy like a tadpole, fuck her. West side till I die, I'm a G though, West. Studio looks something like a freak show. Ugly bitches get cancelled like Nino. And we got dick for them bitches that freeload. I'm a West side treetop rider, whoop. Bitches be freakin', I am the dick Pravita, fuck me bitch, suck me bitch 2x. Slide up raw dog, bust a nut, now I'm like ah nah ah. My daddy told strap up but I didn't listen, strap up. Now I gotta take another trip to the clinic, damn. I got bitches bitches. Life is too short, I'm happy I'm not a midget. Chorus. I like money, I like bitches, I like sittin' on 24 inches. I like weed and I like drank, I do me, fuck what y'all think. Ice cold, stay froze like everyday winner. We don't smoke papers, hittas only smoke swishers. Knock a hit out like Debo hitta. Boo bo bing one hit Akita. Reem riches. Verse 2. What's happenin', it's young homie Reem. Got a chain on my neck, got a pocket full of cheese. Catch me in midtown with my hitta TC. Shootin' dice, it's nothing if a hitta hit his point. All the homies gone rush him. I'm a lil hitta, I don't fight hitta, I am in there bustin'. That's the end of discussion. Hitta fucking hitta, we can line it up. $2 hawing the squad, it's too late for you to sign up. Bitch boy, yay, I'm rich boy, got the boosie fade crackin'. Hitta pants saggin', yay, we run the West, ask 50 what's hannin'. Hit mustard up, tell hitta roll up a blunt. YG shot me pill, hitta I'm fucked up. Straight a student and shit, I'm geeked up. Studio full of bitches, we turn it up. Fast, real fast, tell them hittas keep up. Chorus. TC. Verse 3. I'm in the studio gettin' twisted. With the homies smokin' weed and fuckin' bitches. Newport's hitta, yay, I need a whole pack. Cause I'm off 2 pills and a bottle of yak. Break a bitch back. Snap. I got my chucks on and a strap. Midtown hitta, yay, you know where is at. Skating rink, put the 48 up on the map. It's $2 hawing though and hittas like to hate. Cause we get to the money fast and they late. Do a lot of shows, get paid, smoke weed every day. I'm on top but I love to get laid. Got a lot of bitches running my way. I do my 2-step and then I'm gone. It's tooted and booted, yay bitch, you know the song. Chorus. GCA $. Verse 4. I know dress code say I'm active. And them bitches love a real young gangsta West Hannon. I turn down nothing but ugly hoes. Any many mini mo your bitch chose. I am on and she love the way I throw up the 4. Saggin' with my hittas brack one, I had to get her. Ankle M just might skin her. She gone put me in the Bentley and bring me dinner. Like a red light breaking on bitches, it's a green light. I'm gone with her paper bitch, I'm GCA $0 now. Choco MIP though, quick to blow a hitta brains C. She the rail off my dick, now that's a blow job. Pretty bitch, messy hair, small waist, fat ass, like a attitude bad than a motherfucker. She want a representative, not a busta. Chorus. Naruto was going in, before he stopped as he saw a familiar woman walk into a bar, called Joe's. Pulling into the parking lot, Naruto turned his car off, and hopped out. Inside Joe's bar. Who the hell are you? Damon Salvatore asked Nadia Petrova before Catherine entered the bar, not realizing what was going on until it was too late and Nadia saw her. Which one of you is Catherine Pierce? Nadia asked. Catherine immediately pointed at Elena. She is. Catherine is a compulsive liar, but I need her alive. Nadia said, looking at Catherine before Elena super sped at Naruto's oldest daughter, throwing her against a table. Catherine, run! Elena yelled to Catherine, who turned only to run into Naruto, causing her to look up at him in shock. Hello, my lady. Naruto greeted before he looked over to Nadia, who just threw Elena against the wall. Hey baby girl. Nadia smiled before she was in front of Naruto in a flash and embracing him. Who are you? Damon asked as he helped Elena stand up. No reason for introductions, because today will be the last you'll see of the three of us. Naruto said. Catherine's not going anywhere. Damon said. Hey. Naruto chuckled before he looked down at Catherine, ready to go. Damon growled at being ignored, before he rushed Naruto, only for Naruto to grab him by the neck and hoist him up into the air. Wait Naruto, please don't hurt him. Listen, I'm human now, you can't take me to Klaus. My brother won't harm you, I promise you that. Naruto said, letting Damon go, as he turned to Catherine. Klaus is your brother? You're original? Elena asked. That's right. My name is Naruto Mikhailson, oldest child. Catherine's baby daddy. First werewolf, vampire hybrid in existence. What? Elena and Damon asked in shock. Yes, unlike my brother, I know the damage an army of hybrids pose, so my hybrid status is known to only people I trust. Naruto said. You're lying. Elena said. Because if this were true, I would be a werewolf too. The werewolf gene skipped Isabel, and you thanks to you being a doppelganger. Naruto replied before he turned to Catherine, and in a flash he had a cup in his hand. I'll turn you, but first I'll have to drain you of all your blood. You need to fight. Focus on your reason to live. And what reason is that? Catherine asked. This is Nadia. Naruto introduced as he gestured to his daughter, who stood beside him. Our daughter. Catherine looked shocked as Naruto looked over to Damon and Elena. Don't you both have somewhere to be? He asked, causing the two's eyes to widen before they left. Naruto turned to see Catherine still in shock, before she slowly embraced Nadia, and gasped before tears streamed down her cheeks. Come, we have to do this quickly before those two return, and try to interrupt the process. Naruto led Catherine to the bar, and had her lay on top of it. Nadia placed the large cup under her wrist, before Naruto took a huge bite into his. Carefully he extracted his fangs, and watched as the blood poured into the cup. Naruto took a bite out of his wrist, made it drop into second glass, before he looked up just as the door to the bar opened and a voice said, Well, how do you like that, you have Catherine. Naruto looked over his shoulder to see Silas, along with hostage Matt Donovan. Can we help you? Naruto asked. Silas looked to Naruto and frowned as he was unable to read his mind as well as Nadia's. I'm here for Catherine, step away from her, or Matt here gets it. Matt Donovan? Naruto asked before he turned to the counter. I hoped I'd run into you. He said as he folded $200 bills together so that they took the shape of a shuriken. Step away from the counter. Silas yelled. Nadia, give your mother the blood please. Naruto said before he turned to Silas, and Matt, my name is Naruto and I was made aware of a particular summer vacation you had with my wife. Matt's eyes widened. Now just because I allow my wife to partake in the pleasurable sensations of the flesh, doesn't mean I get, but it's a sacrifice I make for the two women I love when we are states apart, but I have a habit of hunting down the men who they choose to use to scratch that itch. Naruto said before he threw the dollar-made shuriken with an invisible blade of wind covering it, and it went through Matt's neck, before Matt's head fell off. I wonder if his ring will still revive him. Nadia wondered. You knew him? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, I ran into him in Paris. He tried to get me to have a threesome with him and Aunt Rebecca. I stole his ring and had a traveler put into his head. Naruto said before Matt's body burst into flames. His baby girls were untouchable in his eyes. Naruto took note that Matt's ring wasn't burning. Silas was honestly shocked. He thought Matt would honestly get him something to hold over these people. With his mental abilities somehow suppressed, he had no power here, only to see the man vanish and his neck was gripped painfully. Interesting, so you're the infamous Silas. You know you were made out to be some type of godlike being. My brother Cole really feared you. It's a shame you seem pretty weak, with only immortality, and a vast concentration of yin chakra surrounding your body. Naruto said with his dojutsu activated, as he placed Matt's ring in his pocket. Your freedom is going to cause problems for me. I can tell what to do with you. Give him to me. A woman's voice was heard from behind Silas. And you are? Naruto asked, looking at her. I'm Ketsuya. Ketsuya introduced herself. Really? Well, it's an honor to meet the ancestor of Aunt Ayana, but I have a better idea. That'll get us what we both want. The travelers have plans for the last set of doppelgangers. I'll send Silas' soul to the other side with you, and send his immortal body to a different space, leaving you a soul to torture for all eternity. While his doppelgangers will continue to show up. You can do that? Catherine asked as she was helped by Nadia to sit up. Not without a extremely powerful witch. Naruto said, looking at Ketsuya, who smirked. End flashback. Naruto had turned Catherine soon after, as Ketsuya drew up a spell to send Silas' soul to the other side. After using his human path to remove the soul, Naruto sent the body into his Kamui, before Ketsuya killed herself after giving him one hell of a thank you kiss. Naruto had made Catherine apologize to Haley, and Catherine and Klaus avoided each other like he knew they would. Raising his hand, Naruto looked at the Gilbert ring that he kept on his finger to make sure he wouldn't lose it. I'll make sure no one ever touches them again. Naruto thought possessively, before he slid from between the two naked beauties, and went on to take a shower. A smile appeared on his face, as he remembered the last time he was with both of his daughters. Flashback. March 26, 2010. Beverly Hills, California. Palazzo di Amore, Naruto's estate. Naruto grunted as he was thrusting into the tight pussy of Kim Kardashian, who had her hands on the wall of the shower, moaning loudly, while Naruto made out with Nicki Minaj, who stood behind him fondling his sack, before he grunted and filled Kim with his seed. Groaning, Naruto pulled out as Kim turned to him, and kissed Naruto on the lips. It's a shame you both can't spend time with me, and the girls today. Well, we do have boyfriends we have to see. Kim said, smiling as Naruto brought her and Nikki to his chest while groping their asses. We've been sleeping together since you were 17 years old, Kim. A boyfriend, or a husband will never change that. Naruto replied, kissing Kim passionately before he turned to Nikki. What about you, Nikki? You want to hang out? Sorry, have a meeting to go to, then I'm headed back to New York. Nikki said. Naruto sighed before he nodded in understanding, before the two extended their wrist to his mouth. Hey, who would have thought two wolves seeking me out to be turned to hybrids so that they could become celebrities and not have to worry about the full moon, then become my lovers? Naruto said as Kim's and Nikki's eyes flashed golden amber. Well, you are a legend amongst all the species, your love for your family and leadership qualities, not to mention your power. Nikki said as she and Kim slowly started to slid down Naruto's body, while placing kisses on their way down. And the fact that you literally ooze nature energy, of course spirit magic using witches will look to you as their god. Kim said as she and Nikki reached their target. The trio would come out 2 hours later. Naruto opened the door for his lovers and watched them walk to their cars with a smile on his face before he frowned and looked to the text he had gotten a moment ago. Klaus spotted in Mystic Falls, with Rebecca, and the Ripper. So he's awakened Rebecca. Naruto thought, gripping his phone before he heard 2 sets of footsteps behind him. Naruto turned around to see his 2 daughters, the most powerful creatures on the planet after him, as they were 25% witch, 25% vampire, 25% werewolf, 25% god. The witch part of the girls' heritage comes from their mothers. Naruto had placed seals on them both, to suppress whichever part of themselves they wished. He and they were the only ones able to release and reapply the seals. His youngest was 15 years old, and used her witch aspect more. Her name was Davina. She belonged to a coven of ancestral magic using witches, that stay in his family's old stomping grounds, although he only ever speaks to her about things pertaining to her and not about the current state of New Orleans. His oldest, looked 30, but was in actuality 520 years old and used all APSECTS of herself. Her name was Nadia Petrova. She's been his spy in the Travelers, a subculture of witches. He had had a run-in with their leader Marcos, who had tried to take control of his power, which ended in Marcos' brutal death. "There my princesses are. How was your night?" Naruto asked, hugging and kissing his daughters on their foreheads as they made their way to the dining room where his clones were placing breakfast on the table. "It was fine, Dad," Davina said, smiling up at him, although Naruto could see sadness in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Naruto asked. "Nothing, it's just that I don't want to go home is all," Davina said, causing Naruto to sigh and kneel down to her level. "We talked about this, Davina. I would love to have you here forever, but your mother could expose your nature to every supernatural creature and they'll be looking for you to use you as a weapon. I'm still trying to figure out a way to get you permanently," Naruto said. "Everything will be okay, trust me." Davina nodded, before Naruto looked over to Nadia, who smiled at him, before she saw his phone in his hand. "Any news?" Naruto sighed. "Nope. Just Nick, Rebecca, and Stefan have returned to Mystic Falls." "That's where Mother was last seen, wasn't it?" Nadia asked, worried. "Yes. Don't worry, you'll have your reunion with her when you're ready. Now we have 3 months together, so the agenda for that time is fun. No New Orleans talk, no Traveler talk. Deal?" Naruto asked, smiling softly, getting smiles and nods from his daughters before they started to eat their pancakes. Then his daughters went to go get ready so Nadia can take Davina shopping, and Naruto put the 7 of his most trusted vampires in charge of California, the most peaceful place for supernatural creatures, where witches, werewolves and vampires lived in peace. End flashback. Feeling a craving, Naruto got out of the shower and got dressed before he went to find someone to eat. 2 hours later, Haley sat on the couch, flipping through a book as she talked to Agnes. At the table, Rebecca sat and typed on a laptop, waiting for Nadia and Catherine to return. The two went on a shopping trip to catch up, like they've been doing for the past 2 days, as 500 years was a long time. "I told you, Agnes, I feel great," Haley said. "You are overdue for a checkup," Agnes said. "What am I gonna do? Pop into the quarter for a quick ultrasound? A pregnant werewolf escorted by a witch? Nothing to see here," Haley replied sarcastically. Rebecca, who could hear the conversation, commented, "A lot of women would kill to have a child. It strikes me as odd that you're not taking better care of yours." Haley looked at Rebecca sympathetically, as Agnes said, "I know a doctor out in the bayou. Off the beaten path. Now, I took the liberty of making an appointment for you. Tonight, after hours, just us. Vampires will never get word of it." After a moment of thought, Haley said, "Okay, fine. Bayou baby doctor it is." Agnes, with a pleased expression on her face, got her purse and made to leave, only to run into Naruto, causing her to gasp, "Hello, Agnes." Naruto greeted. "What are you doing here?" Agnes asked. "My daughter is missing. Her mom is dead, so I decided to come back to town." "She's better off without you," Agnes said with a sneer. "Just like your husband and son were better off without you, seeing as it's your fault they are dead. Remember when you brought them to Los Angeles along with Bastiana, Sophie, Sabine, and Jane Ann, to help with the birth? Please don't make the same mistake they did, by trying to keep me from my child, because I will kill you, just like I did them. You, Sophie, and Sabine are the only ones who knows of my daughter's true origins. It would be better if I killed your untrustworthy ass right now. You touch me, and the witch community will avenge me in any way they can," Agnes said boldly. Naruto smirked cruelly as his eyes flashed blood red with slitted pupils. "Do you know who I am? I'm Naruto, bitch. I've killed thousands of covens. Adding one more won't be a problem. Now leave, the sight of you makes my skin crawl." Agnes sneered and stormed out of the house, using her anger to hide her fear of the demon that was Naruto. That women must be this universe's version of Danzo, thought Naruto. "Wow," Haley said as Naruto sighed and sat beside her just as Klaus entered and poured himself a drink and sat down across from Rebecca. "What was that about?" "Well, as you heard, I killed Agnes' husband and her son. When my daughter was born, they tried to kill me. Their plan was to use her as a weapon for more power. They wanted to consecrate her among her ancestors to gain more power. They thought I didn't hear them plotting, and when I did, I killed them without mercy. I would have killed the others as well, and raised my daughter by myself, but we came up with a deal. I let them live so long as no harm comes to my daughter. My daughter will come to New Orleans to live amongst her people, to learn how to control her power. Her relation to me kept secret from everyone, and so long as I didn't try and take her, they wouldn't spread the word of my daughter's existence. I don't get it. Why didn't you just kill them then and there? Why accept the deal? Because, when I left here, I took complete control of California, made peace with the vampires and the witches. There was a faction of both species that united to kill me. They wanted control of California. They planned to imprison me, and take over the world with everyone as their slaves. Humans would be slaves, werewolves will be given my blood and turned into hybrids to be soldiers, and vampires and witches who oppose them will be killed or their loyalty will be forced. What did you do? Haley asked. What I do best. I protected my new family, and my home. I hunted them down and slaughtered them. The leader managed to escape before I could get to him. He's still out there? Haley asked. No, Naruto said, shaking his head. 2 months later you came to town, and I took you in, before he snuck into the compound, to find a special object I had made to put me down, if I ever lost control. Naruto said. So you're the adopted brother of the originals. How come you never told me? You never asked. Naruto replied. Besides, I had to get my mind off of them. If I wanted to focus on my community, I had my spies keep tabs on them though. So you all have a good relationship? Haley asked. I have a good relationship with everyone except for Finn. Why? Finn hated me because mother and father kept me around after he was born. My little sister Freya died while me and father were on a hunting trip, and when they had more kids his hatred grew. He kept it hidden from everyone but I could sense it. Naruto said before called Rebecca and Klaus over. Rebecca and Klaus got up and sat in front of Naruto. I did a little snooping while I was out. It would seem that Marcel wants to know how to kill us. What? Klaus asked, shocked. Yes, shocking isn't it? But no worries, Marcel thinks he knows every little secret we have. He'll expect fighting between us, betrayal, and we're going to give it to him. What? Everyone asked. Make no mistake, the fighting will be fake, so the secrets we kept back then have to be laid out now. Naruto said, causing Rebecca to gulp. So there won't be any surprises. I have no secrets, Klaus said with a shrug before he looked to Rebecca, little sister. Marcel and I were responsible for Michael finding us, Rebecca said after a moment of hesitation, causing Klaus to look at her in shock as Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly. What? Klaus asked in horror. You told father where we were. Relax, Nick. Relax. Klaus interrupted as he stood up. My own sister, and the man I treated as a son betrayed me. He yelled before he glared at Rebecca, who looked down sadly. Sit down. We don't need you throwing one of your temper tantrums, when you don't even have all the facts. Naruto said as Haley watched the two hybrids stare each other down before she was amazed at how Klaus submitted. It was then she knew Naruto was the true alpha of his family. Rebecca did lead Michael here, but it wasn't her fault, Naruto said. What do you mean? Rebecca and Klaus asked. Simple. When Rebecca and Marcel went missing, I hunted them down to see them in the cemetery with a witch, under the influence of a dark object that controls the mind, kinda like compulsion. Marcel acted out a deep desire to be free of us, and in control of the city, and for that to happen he needed help getting us out of here, so the witch he was banging Genevieve befriended Becca, to earn her friendship, and when she dropped her guard Genevieve struck, and learned of Michael, and had her take the hunting knife he had passed on to me that I never used, to track him down and send him a message before she rewrote both of their memories. And you did nothing? Klaus asked. A day later Becca killed her, Naruto said with a shrug. He betrayed me to gain control of my town. Klaus growled. Our town, Naruto corrected. You didn't make this town what it is today, Nick. Becca, Elijah, and me, the four of us built this town, and while we were gone Marcel took the plans I laid out and made them his own. This is our town. So what are we going to do? Rebecca asked after a moment of silence. Get Elijah, He's already been undaggered. How do you know that? Haley asked. Because I took it out of him, before I put him to sleep with an illusion so he could gain some strength. You know where he is? Rebecca asked. Street. Anne's Catholic Church. Good. We go there, get our brother while we steal or kill Marcel's secret weapon. Klaus said. Careful. Naruto said. She is not to be harmed. Why? Klaus said. Because she's my daughter. Naruto replied. 3 hours later. The Bayou Clinic. It was now dark. As Agnes drove Haley up to the obstetrician in the Bayou in her car. This is the doctor's office. Agnes smiled. Drive Paige is only this far out because Marcel's men kept terrorizing her patients. Go. She won't bite, she said. Nervously Haley exited the car and walked toward the clinic. Once she was out of earshot, Agnes called someone on her cell phone. Send them in now and tell them to do it quickly, make sure nothing leads back to us. Agnes hung up and drove away. Rousseau's. Davina sat at a table watching as her childhood friend was on stage playing his fiddle with his band. Davina continued to watch him intently. While over at the bar, Marcel kept an eye on Davina as he chatted with Cammy. It's good to see you. I was worried you thought I was some hothead after that display at the masquerade. Marcel said. We all have our hot-headed moments. Anyway, I'm almost done here until cleanup, so the two of us girls can hang out if you need to go schmooze, or whatever. Cammy said with a shrug before Davina leaned over to butt into their conversation. You know, he was supposed to stop hovering like 10 minutes ago. She said. Marcel with a small chuckle said, see what I mean? Authority issues. I'll go talk to the mayor, he actually knows how to show some respect. Marcel walked off. As Cammy watched Davina stare at the boy, and smiled as she approached her. Sue, what's his name? Hot guy with the fiddle. Davina smiled shyly. Tim. She said as Cammy smiled encouragingly. I knew he would be here, he always performs at these kinda things. How long have you two known each other? Cammy asked. Since we were 10. I had to leave school, and I didn't get to say goodbye. So, I was just hoping to talk to him tonight. Davina said, before Cammy went to the back to clock out. You know Dad's going to be very protective when he finds out about him. A voice said beside her. Davina's eyes widened before she looked to her left and saw her sister, causing her to squeal before she hugged her. You're here. Davina said with a smile. I always will be. Nadia said with a smile. Davina looked over to Marcel to see him look over to her, before he looked back to the mayor. A genjutsu? Davina asked. Yup. Naruto said beside Davina looking at Tim. Sue Tim. Is he your boyfriend? Naruto asked getting a blush from Davina. I'll think I'll go talk to him. Naruto started to walk toward Tim, not caring that he was performing, but before he get too far Davina grabbed his arm keeping him from walking over to him. He's not my boyfriend, we're just friends. Davina said. Naruto said. Told ya. Nadia whispered in Davina's ear. Cammy is about to come back, I'll see you later. Naruto said getting a nod from Davina, before Naruto walked over to Catherine who was drinking, happy that her tolerance for alcohol was back. You've been in a good mood for the last few days. Naruto said. Well, of course I'm in good mood. I'm immortal, have my daughter, and my mate back. I no longer have to run from your psychotic foster brother, while pretending me and my best friend hate each other. Why wouldn't I be happy? Catherine said smiling. Naruto shook his head with a smile before he took the bottle of scotch from Catherine and took a big gulp. Street. Anne's Catholic Church. A priest was cleaning up a very run-down-looking church when Rebecca entered, briefly looked at Rebecca before he went back to what he was doing. Church is closed. If you want your horror fix, go take a ghost tour. I don't much care for ghosts. I am, however, fascinated by window shutters. I've been on a town tour of them all day. I noticed the windows of your attic have shutters. Rebecca said. Are you really interested in shutters? The priest asked. I can assure you it's my current life obsession. What's your name? Rebecca asked. Father Kieran. And you are? Father Kieran asked. Mildly curious. Rebecca said, causing Father Kieran to sigh deeply as Rebecca noticed a red stain on the nearby wall. What happened here? Father Kieran sighed again. Street. Anne's used to be the heart of the neighborhood. It's been abandoned for a while now. Since the night of the massacre. 9 seminary students were killed. By one of their own. You're standing on blood. I can assure you, Father, that I'm not squeamish. Where's the attic? Rebecca asked. Like I said, the church is closed. Father Kieran said. Sighing, Rebecca grabbed him by his neck. I can smell the vervain on your breath, so please answer the question or I'll have to resort to a more permanent manner of dealing with you. Where is the attic? Rebecca threatened, asked. Father Kieran grunted, before he managed to choke out. Past the sacristy, up the stairs. Rebecca smiled. Thank you. Before she let Kieran go, and walked off while the father rubbed his neck. Upstairs. Rebecca found the attic and opened the door. To see Elijah's coffin was open. Trying to enter, she discovered that Davina had somehow magically revoked her invitation. In the doorway, she looked over at her brother laying in his open coffin. Elijah's eyes suddenly opened before he looked toward her, and he uses his mental abilities to speak with Rebecca in her head, using a memory of them going to an opera in New Orleans in the 1880s as a backdrop. They were both dressed in 19th century finery and standing in front of a horse and carriage. What the bloody hell? Rebecca asked herself. Elijah approached her from behind, smiling roguishly. Rebecca, language, please. Rebecca turned toward him. Elijah, she said happily before she ran toward him and hugged him tightly before looking around them. What is all this? You don't remember? We went to the opera house together. It was the day Naruto built the manor, and he had me stall you so he could get all your stuff. It's a memory that only you and I share. Also, I needed to know it wasn't another one of Davina's tricks. Well, how are you even awake? Elijah smiled. Naruto removed the dagger. I've spent the last 2 days regaining my strength, but with no blood it's been slow, but in a few hours, I shall be as good as new. So, pop me into the attic and we can find a way to get you out. Rebecca said. I'm afraid I'm not quite ready to leave yet, Rebecca. This girl, Davina, she's Naruto's daughter, and if she's in some kind of trouble I wish to help her, as well as get her away from Marcel. Elijah said as he poured himself and Rebecca a drink. Soon, I shall be able to speak to her, perhaps to even propose a truce of some kind. So, if we can end this war between the vampires and the witches, we'll be able to eliminate the threat to Haley, and her baby. Perhaps then Niklas and our entire family can finally know peace. Naruto is already planning something. It turns out he took Haley in when she was a child as his little sister. He's brought in Nadia and Catherine to help us fight Marcel and protect Haley and her child better. Elijah with a smile nodded. Swear to me you'll do your best to protect her. I swear, Rebecca said before she was back in the real world and left the church, taking out her phone. Bayou. Naruto walked through the woods, with Catherine on his back. They had left Nadia to watch after Davina in case Klaus decided to go behind his back and make a move on Davina. Why am I carrying you again? Naruto asked with a smile. Because these are $500 boots. Catherine answered, extended her right leg to show off her knee-high black boots with the 3 inches heel. Hey, so have you and Nadia been connecting in the last 2 days? Naruto asked. Yeah, I just wish that I had a hand in raising her. Catherine said. Yeah, me too. Naruto replied. Why are we out here anyway? Catherine asked. Because I don't trust that bitch Agnes. Naruto said, getting a nod from Catherine. So do you think Klaus' child will be safe here? Catherine asked. Honestly no, there's too many obstacles. Sure, we have the most strongest beings here, with you being 538, and Nadia being 522. We can take on all comers. The oldest vampire here is Marcel and he just turned 202. The witches won't be too much trouble. You've spent centuries around the Bennett family, one of the most power witch families there is, and you've grown immune to most of their spells. No pain, no gain. Catherine said, remembering the limits she tested her healing capabilities, from vervain to witches using her for spell practice. Right. The strongest witch in the area is Davina. She won't fight us. Hopefully Klaus won't antagonize her. So she won't fight us, but she will fight Klaus. Pretty much. Naruto replied as they both chuckled before suddenly stopping as they sensed themselves being surrounded. Cat. I know. Catherine said, getting off Naruto's back as they looked around themselves while wolves stepped out of the shadows. Why are they wolves? There's no full moon. I don't know. Naruto said before he looked at the wolves seeking the acting alpha, but he couldn't find him. Sighing, Naruto spoke. Stand down. He ordered. One of the wolves snarled at him, before it lunged at him, only for Naruto to catch it by its neck. The other wolves moved to attack only for Naruto's eyes to glow red as he snarled at them, causing them to whine and lay down. Eyes snapping to the now docile wolf in his hand, Naruto threw him to the ground, sensing that one was going to be trouble. Nice. Catherine said. Thank you. Naruto replied with a smile. Nature is surrounding their bodies, keeping them in their wolf forms. A witch did this. Catherine said, getting a nod from Naruto. A strong one. Naruto said. Bayou Clinic. Dr. Page was giving Haley an ultrasound. As Haley laid back, she smiled while listening to the fetal heartbeat. Your baby's heart rate is perfect. Haley smiled in return, as she sat up while Dr. Page handed her a napkin so she could wipe the gel off her stomach. I knew it. She's a tough one, like her mom. Dr. Page noticed the crescent moon-shaped birthmark on Haley's shoulder. That's a unique birthmark, she said, only for Haley to cover it up. We're pretty much done here, right? Haley asked before she got a text from Rebecca. Where are you? Dr. Page walked over from the counter. Your blood pressure is a bit high. I've got something for it, she said. Haley watched as she walked away to her medicine cabinet, as she responded to Rebecca's text. Bayou Clinic with Dr. Walking to the window, Haley saw cars pulling up, which made her suspicious and anxious. Dr. Page returned with her medication, getting her attention. You know, I'm actually not that good with pills. Dr. Page nervously replied. Hey, neither am I, truth be told. As she sat the medicine cup on the table and started preparing something. A group of intimidating-looking men walk into the clinic and whisper something unintelligible amongst each other. Haley turned around to see Dr. Page preparing a syringe, and the doctor lunged at Haley to inject her with it. Haley, acting quickly, grabbed her arm and pushed it away from her, headbutted the doctor to disorient her, and then stabbed the syringe into the doctor's neck. When the men in the lobby saw what happened, they ran toward the door, but Haley managed to shut and lock it before they could enter. One of the men rattled the doorknob as Haley struggled to open the window to escape. When they finally got in, Haley had already escaped and was running away. Rousseau's Dauphine Street Music Festival. Outside, Tim was struggling to unlock his car, as his hands were filled with his fiddle case, when Klaus, who was behind, spoke. Hello, Tim. Klaus greeted, while Tim stared at the strange man with a raised eyebrow. I believe you and I share an acquaintance. Gripping him tightly by the shoulder, Klaus compelled him, be a good lad and help me send her a message. Inside, Cammy and Davina were still inside Rousseau's, looking for Tim. Well, he couldn't have gone far, he just got off stage a minute ago. Davina sighed and blinked tears from her eyes. It doesn't matter, this was a stupid idea anyway. Her frustration calling upon aspects of her werewolf temper. No, it wasn't. Davina, Cammy said, trying to help. Just forget it. Davina interrupted her before he ran off toward the one person closest to her, her big sister Nadia, who was in the back talking to other women. Klaus approached Cammy from behind and handed her a note. Tell her this is from one of the musicians. She'll want to leave, and you're going to want to help her slip out the back exit so Marcel doesn't see. Klaus ordered as Haley nodded. Whatever you do, don't let her out of your sight. Cammy looked slightly annoyed, but when she turned around to talk to Klaus, he had already zoomed away. Wait, Davina. Cammy said before she ran to catch up to her, causing Davina to turn toward her. Wooded area in the bayou. The men who raided the clinic were still looking for Haley, and they passed her, not seeing that she was hiding behind a tree. Before she ran up to them and kicked the first man she encountered in the gut and knocked him to the ground. She jumped and kicked the second man down as well, and snapped his neck. A third man tried to attack her, but she grabbed a knife from his hands and sliced his neck with it as she spun in the air. When a fourth attacked her, she grabbed his shotgun and knocked him to the ground, before she bludgeoned him to death by hitting him with the butt of the shotgun, as well as stomping on his head. Haley crouched on the ground, and her eyes flashed werewolf gold as she looked for any more threats. A large, burly man descended upon her, but before Haley could react, only for Naruto to appear and hit the man with a lariat, blowing away the man's entire chest area. So you were right, Agnes couldn't be trusted, Catherine said behind Haley, who got up and hugged Naruto, happy to see him. How'd you find me? Haley asked. We were already on our way here. Naruto didn't trust Agnes to not pull something, so he wasn't about to leave you alone with her. Who are they? A voice asked behind them, causing them to turn and see Rebecca. Witches, warlocks, whatever, Haley said as Naruto and Rebecca kissed and hugged, before they all noticed more men with flashlights in the distance. There are more of them. Run, Rebecca told Haley, who looked to Naruto, who nodded slightly, and reluctantly she ran off as the three immortals prepared for a fight when suddenly Haley screamed in pain. Turning around, they saw Haley fall to the ground. Haley, Naruto shouted before he zoomed next to her body to see blood on her back with wet hole in her short. Grabbing at the air, Naruto gripped something and pulled it out of Haley's back to see it was a cloaked arrow that was coated in a poison. Throwing the arrow, Naruto made to bite his wrist only to see Haley had already healed. Looking over, he saw Rebecca and Catherine had made short work of the men while a lone wolf was taking care of the others that hadn't made it to the clearing yet. When the last one was dead, Naruto picked up Haley and turned to his girls. Let's get out of here, Naruto said before they all zoomed off. Street. Anne's Catholic Church. Tim was standing in the aisle, staring at the statues and lit candles at the altar in the front of the room, when Cammy and Davina found him there. Cammy smiled at Davina encouragingly. Davina looked at Tim, as she whispers, I can't do this. Cammy, still smiling, gently pushed Davina toward Tim and watched as she approached him, as Tim turned around when he heard her, and his face brightened up. Davina waved awkwardly. Hey, Tim. I got your note, she said. I got your text message, Tim said. Thanks for meeting me here, Davina said before she sighed and smiled. Tim laughed. It's so amazing to see you. I can't even believe I'm standing here right now. I just, sighs, wow, Tim said as Davina giggled nervously. So, how have you been? And why did you want to meet here? It's so creepy, all the terrible stuff that happened. Davina walked toward altar. I dunno, I kind of like it. It's quiet. The place can't be bad for all time, just because one bad thing happened, right? She asked, turning toward Tim. Wait, no, all right, back up. So where? One day you just stopped coming to school, and then it's like you just vanished. Tim asked. There was an emergency, and I needed to take care of some things. Davina said vaguely. Oh, are you okay? I mean, you look okay. You look great, actually, Tim said before he mentally kicked himself for saying that, as Davina giggled. So, are you coming back to school? Immediately Davina's smile fell, followed by Tim's, no. But I need you to know that even though I was away, I miss you. Davina said with a smile. I miss seeing you at school, seeing you play your violin. Tim gulped nervously and gestured to the walls of the room. Well, this place does have great acoustics. Davina looked confused for a moment, until she saw him pick up his violin and bow. She sat down to watch and listen to him play. Nadia was on the balcony listening to her sister's friend play his violin, smiling, before she looked to her left as Naruto and the girls showed up with Naruto still holding an unconscious Haley. What happened? Nadia asked quietly. That bitch Agnes had some of her goons try to kill Haley, Naruto said as he laid Haley down. Is she okay? Nadia asked, walking over to stand by her father. Yes, the baby has healed her. Now all she has to do is wake up, Naruto said as he, Rebecca and Catherine looked over the balcony to Tim and Davina. What the hell is this? Nadia and the others smiled. It seems like little Davina may have a boyfriend, Rebecca said, grinning, while Naruto's eyebrow twitched. before he placed his foot on the banister and made to jump down, but he was immediately grabbed and held down by the three immortal women who giggled silently as he struggled to get away, so he could protect his baby girl. Cammy was staring at the bloodstains on the walls in the back of the church, listening to Tim play for Davina, when Klaus joined her. The boy has a gift. You can't compel a person to play like that, Klaus said, standing by Cammy. I know what you are. It's crazy to me, but at least it makes sense. But this massacre was just a pointless, brutal thing. In your life, have you ever heard of anything like that? A good man, an aspiring priest, just goes on a killing spree out of nowhere. Cammy said, looking to Klaus. Klaus sat next to Cammy with a sigh. I've seen quite a lot in my time. The world is a rather awful place. Best to meet it on its own terms. Cammy shook her head. No. The world isn't awful. People aren't awful. They want to be good. Something makes them bad. Something breaks them down, makes them snap. There are always signs, symptoms, before someone has a psychotic break. The guy who did this had none of them. He didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, she said. You're well informed on the matter, Klaus said before he looked to her with a look of realization. You knew him, didn't you? He asked. Cammy blinked back tears, and spoke. His name was Sean. He was my brother. My twin, actually. I can't sleep. I dream about what happened, and I hate it, and I hate that I couldn't help him, she said as she leaned forward while Klaus looked at her with a sympathetic glint in his eyes. We all must stand alone against our demons, Klaus said. What if someday, his demons become mine too? Cammy asked as she looked at him expectantly, and he noticed that Tim had finished playing. I have some business I should attend to. But before I do, Klaus started before he placed a hand on her shoulder and looked in her eyes to compel her. You should go, enjoy the music. Put this out of your mind. Klaus watched her get up and leave the church to return to the festival. Dauphine Street Festival. Father Kieran walked down Dauphine Street when he saw Marcel walking around the festival looking for Davina. Marcel, he shouted. Marcel turned to Father Kieran and walked over to him. Father Kieran, welcome back. I wasn't sure when you'd be coming home, he said. I can tell, judging by what's been going on in my church attic, Father Kieran replied. Marcel smiled coldly. I didn't think you'd mind. Lord knows I've done you a favor or two. Father Kieran lowered his voice and said, I take it you know the originals have returned. The sister, Rebecca. I saw her earlier, snooping around the church, asking about the attic. She could tell that I took vervain. You got a problem on your hands. Marcel gritted his teeth before he replied. No disrespect, for the grieving process, for you and your church, but just so I know, are you here to help, or are you just going to drop in with criticism? Father Kieran laughed coldly, and leaned in to whisper to Marcel. Never forget, Marcel, that you live in this city by the grace of those who know your secret and tolerate you. And this city thrives because of me and my people. Anytime that you need a reminder of that, just let me know. Marcel said as he glared at Father Kieran menacingly, but their argument was interrupted by Josh. Marcel. Diego said he lost eyes on the girls. Josh reported. Marcel turned to Father Kieran and said, to be continued. With a frustrated look on his face. Street. Anne's Catholic Church. Tim was about to put his violin in the case, only to when Davina stood in front of him, both smiling at each other. Naruto, who was on the balcony still being held down, gritted his teeth. She's too young to have a boyfriend, he said as he continued to struggle, much to the amusement of Catherine, Nadia, and Rebecca, only for the amusement to immediately die out when Klaus walked up to the two kids. You two are absolutely adorable. Warms my heart, it really does, but I do need a word with the young lady, Klaus said. Naruto growled as the girls let him up. Let's see how she handles him, Nadia said to her father, who nodded reluctantly. So, Tim, go sit down, count to 100,000. Klaus compelled as he watched Davina while Tim walked to the back of the church, quietly. Now, there's a good boy. Davina watched Klaus cautiously, as he smiled. I assume you know who I am. Then, let's get right to it, shall we? he said as he walked up the altar and turned toward her. Your current dilemma strikes me as a case of poor alliances. You're loyal to Marcel and yet he keeps you tucked away in an attic. Surely you prefer just a little bit more freedom. And yet Marcel keeps you prisoner. Klaus said. Marcel doesn't keeps me prisoner, he keeps me safe. He's my friend. Davina replied calmly while she rubbed her finger on the palm of her hand where a sun-like mark was imprinted. Well, I've no doubt he is. Klaus said, taking a couple steps forward and crouching down to her level. For a girl caught in a war between witches and vampires, I might be a better friend. I would keep you safe. I mean, after all, we are family. And I'd allow you your freedom. If Marcel could do that, why hasn't he done so already? And it does beg the question. If Marcel can't protect you, then what of those you care about? Klaus asked as he gestured to Tim, who was sitting in the last pew. If anyone tries to hurt anyone I care about, I'll kill them. Well, then, sounds like you don't need Marcel at all. Perhaps you've suspected it all along. Your dear friend Marcel tricks you into doing his bidding. Klaus said before he smirked and shot her a fake sympathetic her. And all the while you rot in an attic, alone, while young Timothy moves on with his life. Davina's eyes flashed white, and the sclera flashed black, the seal temporarily coming undone, before she glared at Klaus, angry. You feel that? That's your blood starting to boil. Klaus groans as he could hear the hiss of his blood boiling. He placed a hand to his forehead and composed himself. Naruto, who was watching angry, had enough, before he saw Klaus turn to Tim and super speed toward him. Klaus decided to use another method to get his niece's loyalty. About to grab Tim, he stopped as pain flared in his chest. Looking down, he saw a golden dagger with red tribal marks on the handle embedded in his chest. Looking up, he saw the angry eyes of Naruto before he gasped when he saw his hand turn gray, before he started to desiccate. Rebecca and Catherine watched in shock as Klaus desiccated and fell to the ground. Davina smiled seeing her dad, only to frown as she felt woozy. Rebecca and the girls landed beside Naruto. I thought the silver daggers didn't work on him. Catherine said. They don't, but this was made by my old friend Sheila. I had it bound with white oak ash, and since it's made completely from diamond it's able to subdue me, and Niklas. Naruto said before they all looked around as the church started to rumble. While a breeze blew through, Naruto looked to Davina, who was groaning as she clutched her forehead. Davina. He asked and made to walk to her, only for her to suddenly scream and the windows to shatter, and blow everyone back, while Davina lost consciousness. Dauphine Street Music Festival. Cammy walked down the street, observing the people partying around her, when Marcel approached her frantic. Where is she? Where's Davina? She went to meet a boy, in St. Anne's Church. Cammy said. Marcel sighed, while rolling his eyes. Stay here in case she comes back. He said as Cammy watched Marcel, concerned, as he walked away quickly. St. Anne's Catholic Church. Davina awoke to find her head resting on Naruto's lap as he sat in a pew while running his fingers through her hair. Hello, princess. Naruto greeted, looking down to her with a smile. Davina smiled up at Naruto before she frowned and her eyes widened. Tim. She shouted and got up to see Rebecca, Nadia, and Catherine helping him up before he walked away. We healed him up, and compelled him to forget about everything. What? Daddy, no. Davina said. It's for the best, sweetie. If the witches were to find out about him, they will do exactly what Klaus attempted to do. Naruto said as Davina looked down sadly. Naruto placed his hand on her head. It'll get better, trust me. He said before he looked. Marcel's on his way, we have to go. Naruto kissed Davina's forehead as they embraced before he vanished to the balcony and picked up Haley, before he and the girls vanished in a flash of red. Davina frowned and cried silently as she picked up Tim's smashed violin off the floor. She walked into the aisle and turned around when she heard Marcel approaching her. Davina. What happened? What are you doing here? Marcel asked, looking around. I live here, remember? Davina replied angrily before she turned away and walked back to her room. Marcel looked at her, confused, and sighed as she walked away. Mikhailson Mansion. Naruto was spinning the dagger in his hands as he sat beside Klaus' bed, when Klaus suddenly woke with a gasp. Finally, Naruto said, getting his attention. What did you do? Klaus asked. I punished you, like how you did with the others. Naruto said as he sat up. Naruto, you nothing. You tried to force my daughter's loyalty, and you would have used her friend to do it. Naruto interrupted before he held up with dagger. I had this dagger made for the both of us, and I have no problem using it. You need to get your mind right. We all are in this together. We are here to help you protect your child, so get your head out of your ass, because if I can't trust you to put the family's best interest at heart, I will dagger you and leave it in your heart, for 100 years. Klaus nodded in understanding before he apologized, not letting it show that Naruto's threat had got to him. Nick, I know you've been on your own for a while now, but you're not anymore. I have your back like I always have and I always will. I love you, brother. Klaus smiled as Naruto walked out of his room, before he sighed and stood up before he left his room. 15 minutes later, Cammy's apartment. Cammy was in her pajamas, sitting in front of her bedroom mirror as she took off her necklace, when she saw Klaus standing in the doorway in the reflection, and turned to talk to him. Klaus. What are you doing here? She asked. I've had quite a night. I recall you mentioned something about nightmares and insomnia. I believe I can help. Can I come in? This is super weird. Come in, Cammy said before she stood up as Klaus walked into the room. Wait, that's right, I told you what happened. I never tell anybody, but I told you. She said before tears started to fill her eyes, and you said something about Sean standing alone against his demons. When he killed those men, I thought he must be mentally ill, but Cammy gasped in realization. What if it was demons? What if a vampire compelled him? And if so, would you devote yourself to finding the guilty party? Klaus asked as a tear fell down his cheek. Would you sacrifice everything to find out the truth? Klaus walked toward her. To what end? Cammy, suspicious, backed away. To what end? This is the entire reason why I'm in New Orleans. She yelled. Cammy, whatever lies on the other end of this mystery will only offer you pain. Nothing will bring your brother back. Klaus continued to walk toward her. Your only hope for peace is to forget this. Cammy, realizing what he's about to do, said, No. And move on. Klaus said, No, don't compel me to forget this. Cammy said, and if I allow you to remember, the knowledge will eat away at you. Klaus replied as more tears filled his eyes, and Cammy started to tear up more as well. Your quest for truth will only put you in danger. You don't care about me. Cammy yelled, causing Klaus to shake his head. You only want me to forget this so I can focus on Marcel. So I'll be a good little spy, for you. I need your loyalty, yes, and though it may appear selfish to you, the scope of my plan goes far beyond myself. Power aside, I am trying to honor my brother. Cammy bit her lip. What about my brother? My twin brother. We were bonded our whole lives, and I know, he didn't just snap. And I need to know who did this, and I need to make this right. Klaus walked closer to her. No. Don't take this away from me. She yelled. Klaus grabbed Cammy and compelled her. You will do nothing. Your brother was ill. He killed those people and himself, and it was a tragedy. All you can do is move on. Klaus sat Cammy down as tears fell from her eyes before he took her hand in his as he continued to compel her. Know that your brother is at peace, and that you needn't worry. I will find out what happened, and when I do, I will make sure whoever harmed your brother will suffer. And as for you, tonight, you will sleep, and you will dream of a world that is far better than this one, a world where there is no evil, no demons, and all people desire only to be good. Rousseau's. Naruto sat at the bar, having broke into Rousseau with a bottle of Avion tequila, when he heard steps behind him. I would have thought you'd been in your castle, surrounded by your family. He said. Thought I'd take a moment to myself, and here I find you drinking by your lonesome. Marcel said as he sat beside Naruto and picked up the bottle of Avion and grabbed a glass from behind the bar and smiled. Flashback. 1835. Naruto walked into the dining room, after letting the wolves in to kill the staff, while all the slaves were freed. Naruto had a handkerchief wiping off the blood from his face. As he saw Marcel standing over the governor, he's still alive. Naruto said. Yeah, I want him to die slowly. It'll be the perfect revenge for what he did to my mother as well as what he did to me. Marcel said. Naruto nodded before he noticed a dinner fork on the table. Well, this'll be the perfect time for you to learn compulsion. He said, placing his hand on Marcel's shoulder. Now the trick is to believe what you're telling him. In this case, when you're ordering him to do something, be sure that it's what you want him to do. Marcel nodded and looked to his father. Pick up the knife. Marcel said, and slowly his father picked up the knife. Now cut out your heart. Naruto and Marcel watched as the governor started to cut his heart out while he was screaming in pain. End flashback. So tell me, Marcel, did you ever look for any of us? Naruto asked. No, Marcel said, looking down as Naruto nodded, taking another gulp from his glass. So you decided it was better for us to think you dead, while you stayed here and ruled in our stead. Naruto said. It wasn't like that. It wasn't, because to me it looks like you wouldn't have given two fucks if we had never came back. Naruto said. You dead ass, was being with us that much of a burden, that you'd allow us to believe you were dead, because of us? What do I was just supposed to live under your rules for eternity? I would have rather died than be a slave again. Naruto grabbed Marcel by the back of his head and slammed it into the bar before he grabbed him by his collar. We took you into our family, raised you, and saved you from that life. Me and Niklas fought for you to stay with us. After the Cole incident, when Rebecca and Elijah thought it was too dangerous for you to stay with us. Naruto growled as his face changed before he threw Marcel to the bar. The plan was for us to extend our reach to all of New Orleans, and we were ready to leave you a couple of cities to rule over the way you wanted to. But guess that wouldn't have been enough since we treated you a little better than the other slaves. Naruto grabbed his bottle, and left Rousseau's, slamming the door behind him, as Marcel sighed and sat with his back to the wall for an hour, before he got up and returned home. Davina's room. Davina was touching Tim's broken violin, before she turned sadly toward her wind chimes, and used her magic to telekinetically make them play the song Tim played for her. Before she tensed when she heard the floorboard creak, and turned around. Walking toward Elijah's coffin, she was about to open it when she stopped and turned around and saw Elijah standing behind her, looking gray from not feeding. It's all right, Davina. I don't mean you any harm, though I do think it's time we had a talk. Elijah said before they both gave each other small smiles. Street. Anne's church. Elijah stood in Davina's room in the attic, right in front of Davina as the two stared at each other. His skin was gray and mottled still from not feeding during the months he was daggered, and he couldn't help but focus on Davina's pulsing carotid artery as a result of his hunger. Davina noticed but was unfazed. You're the one they call honorable. Davina said. Elijah smiled at his niece. Yes, that's what they call me. And yet, I followed my brother here to New Orleans to engage in a war. So, I ask you, does that sound honorable to you? He said as he sat in a chair. You don't look well, Davina observed. Well, only this morning, I had a mystical dagger embedded in my chest, so I'd say I'm holding myself together quite well. Elijah said before he took a breath and continued. Davina, I believe that you and I have the power to end a war between witches and vampires before it truly begins. I, by keeping my brother in line. You, by behaving like your true self, not some tool for Marcel or the witches. And why should I trust you? Davina asked. Well, for one thing, in spite of a ravenous hunger, I have not tried to take your blood. Elijah said. Why not? I'm the only one here. Davina replied. Even in my present condition, I would not feed from a child. Especially when that child is my niece. Elijah said. Davina looked at Elijah for a moment before she walked to her table and took a hat pin before she pricked her finger with it. A drop of blood clung to the tip of it, and she placed the drop on Elijah's lip. Elijah licked the drop of blood off of his lower lip, and after a moment, Elijah's skin returned to its normal complexion, as Davina looked pleased and smiled at him. Michelson Mansion. Klaus was pacing in the back kitchen of Rousseau's, which was empty of employees. When Sophie finally came into the room with a basket of produce, Klaus grabbed her and Vamp sped her to the plantation house for a meeting. Arriving in the living room, where Rebecca stood waiting for them, Klaus dropped Sophie onto the couch. "We had a deal. You protect my unborn child, I dismantle Marcel's army. And whilst I've been busy fulfilling my part of the bargain, you allowed Haley to be attacked and almost killed by a gaggle of lunatic witches," he said angrily as he moved to sit across from her. "I had nothing to do with it, I swear. Haley and I are linked, remember? She dies, I die," Sophie explained frantically. "Then who were they?" Rebecca asked curiously. "They are a faction of extremists. Sabine stupidly told them about some vision she had about the baby," Sophie said with a sigh. "What kind of vision?" Klaus asked suspiciously. "She has them all the time. They are totally open to interpretation. I'm guessing she's wrong on this one," Sophie said assuredly. "Well, how, may I ask, was this particular vision interpreted?" Klaus asked sitting up. Quote. "Pretty much that your baby would bring death to all witches," Sophie said. "Ah, well, I grow fonder of this child by the second," Klaus said with a proud grin on his face. "Sophie, look, I promised Elijah that I would protect the Mikhailson miracle baby whilst he tries to win your witch Davina's loyalty. Why don't you tell me just how extreme this faction is?" Rebecca asked sitting beside Klaus. "Elijah's talking to Davina," Sophie asked in shock. "Yeah, as we speak, I imagine," Rebecca said. "I'm guessing she'll have plenty to say about that crowd." "Do tell," an intrigued Klaus said. "Yes, I would like to hear this as well," Naruto said standing in the doorway, hybrid features on full blast. "Naruto," Sophie gasped, getting up and backing away as Naruto stalked toward her. "I trusted you," Naruto growled, speeding forward. "Naruto," Rebecca shouted, getting up as Naruto was in front of Sophie with his fist reared back. "She's linked to Haley." Naruto's eyes widened before he moved his hand to the side and the entire wall behind Sophie cracked. "And Naruto, she tried to say. Save it," Naruto growled, stepping back. "I heard the story from Davina's point of view, now let me hear yours. And it better be good." Sophie watched as Naruto sat in between Rebecca and Klaus, before she took a deep breath. "I wasn't always an advocate for the witches." Flashback. New Orleans, 8 months ago. Rousseau's. Sophie was dancing to music behind the bar as the crowd cheered, before she turned to them and sat down on the bar. "Woo, drink up everybody. This is how they party in Rio." Sophie poured liquor into a man and woman's mouth before kissing them. "My sister was devoted, like our parents, and our upbringing was very strict, which drove me nuts. The minute I turned 21, I left the quarter to travel and play. But I wanted to be a chef, so I came back to Rousseau's." Flashback. Jane Ann entered Rousseau's to find her sister, who she saw drinking in the crowd before they made eye contact. "Oh, Jane Ann." Sophie yelled happily, putting the bottle down and jogging over to her sister before they hugged affectionately. "Welcome home, Soph. Can we go someplace to talk?" Jane Ann asked, looking around. "Just tell me," Sophie said. "The elders called a vote. We're moving forward with the harvest," Jane Ann told her sister, who looked at her in shock. "What?" Sophie asked. "Present." Rebecca looked confused. "What the bloody hell is a harvest?" "It's a ritual our coven does every 3 centuries so that the bond to our ancestral magic is restored. We appease our ancestors, they keep our ancestral power flowing," Sophie explained. "And why haven't I heard of this?" Klaus asked. "Because every time it was attempted I was there to kill everyone that was supporting the ritual," Naruto said. "Why would you do that?" Klaus asked, looking at his brother. "Because of the requirements to do the ritual," Naruto said vaguely. Flashback. Close to a dozen young witches were standing and kneeling in a row outside a farmhouse. An older witch, Bastiana, held a knife as she paced in front of the girls. She stopped in front of the first girl, Monique, and made a small cut on the palm of her hand. "To be reborn, we must sacrifice. To be reborn, we must sacrifice," Monique repeated nervously. Bastiana moved on to the next girl and cut her hand as well. "To be reborn, we must have faith," she said. "To be reborn, we must have faith," Cassie repeated. Do you have faith in the harvest? Bastiana asked the next girl. Sophie showed up and stomped toward the witches, not for a second. She shouted before the girl could answer, as everyone turned to look at her. Sophie, Monique said in surprise. What are you doing? Sophie asked Bastiana. Saving the community you renounced. The elder replied. You're all ridiculous. Monique, seriously? Sophie asked, looking at her niece who looked down. My mom told me I had to. Monique said reluctantly. Yeah, well, your mom and I are gonna have words. Sophie said before she stormed off. Davina was the last girl in the row, and she watched in suspicion as Sophie stormed away, before she glanced to the annoyed faces of the elder witches. Farmhouse. Jane Ann and Cynthia were making lunch for all the girls, when Sophie barged in. How could you two do this? Do what, Sophie? Cynthia asked. Put Davina and Monique in the harvest. Being chosen is an honor. Jane Ann said. An honor? Will it be an honor when Naruto shows up looking for Davina? Sophie asked. Don't you worry about Naruto. I told him she was buried in her studies, and will call him when she gets the chance. It's Davina's destiny to help her coven. Cynthia said. Present. That bitch. Naruto thought. They had the girls of our community preparing for months. 4 would be chosen for the harvest. They said that it was an honor, that they were special. I thought it was a myth. Sophie said. Was it? Rebecca asked. Sophie looked guilty, but before she could say anything, Klaus's cell phone rung. Checking it, he saw that it was Marcel before he answered it. Marcel. Bit early in the day for you, isn't it? Klaus asked. I know, I make this look easy, but I still have an empire to run. Marcel said. Rather you than me. All that responsibility seems like such a bore. Klaus said with a fake smile. Well, this might spice things up. I just heard about a bunch of dead witches out in the bayou. The kinda damage a werewolf might do, only there was no full moon. I have an informant out there I need to meet, and I would love for you to go with me. Marcel replied. Dead witches in the bayou. Sounds like less of a problem, and more like a cause for celebration. Klaus retorted. Well, something killed them. And may still be out there. And with your blood being a cure for werewolf bites, I would love for you to accompany me. Marcel said. Oh, why not? Haven't been to the bayou in ages. I'm on my way. Klaus replied. Peace out, brother. Marcel said before he hung up, holding a picture of the plantation house where the originals were now living. A woman who was standing next to him held a stack of other photos in her hands as he turned to her. This is the one. Thank you, sweetie. Marcel said before he left. As the woman left the compound, she vanished in a puff of smoke unseen by anyone. Mikhailson Mansion. Sophie, having heard Klaus' end of the conversation, looked at him in concern. You can't go out there now. I need to gather the witches' remains and consecrate them. If I don't get to them before sundown, we'll lose the link to their magic, she said as Haley, Nadia, and Catherine came in. Those witches tried to kill Haley. I'd prefer for Marcel's informant not to find anything that would lead him back to us, to her, or to, you know. That, Klaus said, pointing at Haley's stomach. You are all class, Haley said, rolling her eyes. We have a problem, Nadia said suddenly in Japanese, getting everyone's attention. Marcel plans on moving Davina here. Sophie looked at the immortals in confusion at the sudden language change. Huh. I'll have some clones move us into the manor. Naruto said in English before 30 clones appeared around the room before they vanished. We'll go out with Sophie. Everyone looked to Sophie, who looked determined, before Klaus left. Street. Anne's church. Father Kieran was sweeping the church when Marcel walked in and approached him on his way up the stairs to Davina's room. Look who's back. Here to visit your prisoner in the attic. Kieran asked snarky. Lay off. She's not a prisoner, and I'm moving her tonight. Too many people know where she is. Marcel said. I have been hearing about what you've been up to since I've been out of town. Using that girl to keep the witches from doing magic. All respect, Father K. If you're going to defend the witches' rights, we got nothing to talk about. Marcel said before walking away. Upstairs. In her room, Davina was drawing while Elijah walked around taking in his surroundings. Before he picked up Tim's broken violin from a table and examined it. Do you play? That's not mine, Davina said sad. Elijah sat in a chair and tinkered with the violin for a moment, until Marcel's footsteps was heard from outside the room. When he entered, Elijah had hidden himself away. Good news, little D. I'm moving you out this pile of dust. Are you serious? When? Davina asked happy. Tonight. I just need to lock in the arrangements. How's our original? Marcel asked, moving toward Elijah's coffin before Davina stopped him. Don't disturb the body. I have a spell in progress. Davina lied expertly. Marcel shrugged before he turned to her. Bet you do. Pack up. K. Only what you wanna take. I'll buy ya anything else you need. Okay. Davina said in fake excitement, before Marcel walked off, and Elijah appeared from a corner. You didn't reveal that I was awake. Elijah said, mildly surprised. We're not done talking yet. Davina shrugged before she sat down, before Elijah picked up the violin and sat down before returning to fixing it. You and Marcel seem very close. Elijah noted. Marcel's my friend, Davina said. And yet Marcel is someone who delights in harming the witches. Those people, I would think, you would consider friends. This doesn't trouble you? Elijah asked. No, they deserve it, Davina replied. Why would you say that? Elijah asked. 'Cause they're liars. All of them, Davina stated. Flashback, the harvest ritual rehearsal, 8 months ago. The girls were still kneeling in a row outside the farmhouse, where Bastiana touched 4 of the girls' foreheads with ash to indicate who had been chosen for the ritual. Monique, Davina, and 2 other girls, Abigail and Cassie, were chosen for the harvest. They made me and my friends do this harvest ritual. They said our participation would bring our family strength, health, that we'd forever be celebrated as saviors of the community. But all they really wanted was more power. So, I left before they could get it. Now, they're running out of time, because after the harvest, comes the reaping. And if they don't complete the harvest, there won't be a reaping. Soon, all the witches in the quarter will start to lose their power. Eventually, they will cease to be witches altogether. Davina explained. So what does it take to complete this ritual? Elijah asked. I have to die, Davina said, causing Elijah to narrow his eyes. Big Augie's Bayou Bar. Klaus joined Marcel at the bar with a frustrated look on his face. Everything okay? Marcel asked. My brother invited a vampire that I've been hunting for 500 years to town. Klaus said, taking a shot before he looked around and asked. So, where's your informant? Tomas. He's out sniffing around. Have a drink, and then we'll chase him down. Marcel offered, inwardly worried, as he may have numbers on his side, but the quality of Klaus' side would easily take out his army. 3 originals, even with Elijah still daggered, and a vampire that was 500 years old, and he could bet that Naruto's daughter Nadia will eventually show up as well. If she hasn't already. Well, I suppose it will give us a chance to talk things over, like why you haven't returned Elijah. Maybe your young witch has grown partial to his company. She must get so bored. Klaus said, taking off his jacket and sitting down. You never stop, do you? Marcel asked, exasperated. You never answer, do you? Klaus asked in return. Why are you so curious about Davina? Marcel asked. If I had a 16-year-old all-powerful witch at my beck and call, you would wonder about her, too. Klaus said. You're never gonna get her. Marcel said with a forced smile. Okay, I'll ask the harmless questions, then. How did you meet her? That might surprise you. This was 8 months ago, before I banned the witches from using magic. Relations between vampires and witches weren't what you'd call friendly, by any means, but let's just say we were a little less divided. In fact, some of us were getting along just fine. Marcel said. Flashback, New Orleans, 8 months ago. Marcel lied in his bed while Sophie dried herself off, pacing beside him. It's so screwed up. I'm dealing with whacked out, militant witches. Sophie said. Hey, you witches all got a little crazy in you. And my sister has really gone off the deep end this time. Sophie said. Yeah, Jane Ann's got martyr written all over her, that's for sure. Marcel said with a sigh. They've got every 16-year-old girl in our coven dying to be one of the 4 chosen for this crazy-ass ritual. Anything I can do to help? Marcel asked. No, you've caused enough trouble with them. What? Little old me? Marcel asked. You're a dick. You always stir it up with the witches. Which is why this, Sophie started before she kissed him briefly on the mouth, stays between us. Sophie leaned in and kissed him again, deeper this time. Present day. Klaus looked at Marcel incredulously. You and Sophie. You hypocrite. You torture those witches, and yet there you were, getting positively Romeo and Juliet with Sophie Devereaux. Oh, hey, it wasn't like that. It was a mutually satisfying hookup. Marcel replied before the two laughed. So, if Sophie didn't turn to you, her secret vampire lover, in her hour of need, what did she do? She did what any good girl do. She went to her priest. Flashback Street. Anne's church. 8 months ago. Sophie, Father Kieran, Jane Ann, Bastiana and Agnes were having a meeting at the church. The witches, aside from Sophie, did not look pleased, and Kieran seemed appalled by their decision to do the harvest. You've never cared about witch business, Sophie. And now, you have the gall to reveal our private dealings to an outsider. Bastiana asked. You have to find another way. Kieran said. You think we do this lightly? The vampire presence in the quarter is growing stronger. We need more power to fight them off. Harsh times call for harsh measures. Bastiana said, getting a nod of agreement from Agnes. This is a little more than harsh, Bastiana. Have you even thought of the consequences? Sophie asked. You don't understand, because you don't believe. You've never believed. But I believe enough to put everything on the line for this. And being chosen for the offering, it's an honor. Jane Ann said. It's a myth, Jane Ann. Sophie said. I would be willing to go along with this if there was ever a coven who actually performed the ritual, but there hasn't ever been one. You all know the reason why, and yet you want to use his daughter in the spell. He'll be a million times worse than the last coven that attempted the harvest. You're being paranoid, Sophie. He would understand if we explains it to him, I am sure. Bastiana said. He created the Grand Canyon, just because a witch attempted to ask about the spell. Sophie said. If he hears even a whisper of the harvest, he'll be here to kill us all. Sophie said. We are simply taking what we need. Our connection to our ancestors weakens over time. You sow, and you reap. That's the way the harvest works. I'm sure the Shinju will understand. His daughter will be stronger once we go through with it. I am the only ally the witches have in this town. Do you really wanna face Marcel without me? Because that is what you'll be dealing with if you go through with the harvest. Kieran yelled, having enough of being ignored. Sean O'Connell, Cammie's brother, heard the argument and came out to investigate. Everything okay in here, Uncle Kieran? We're just finishing, Sean. Right. Kieran said before he glared at the witches. I believe I've made myself clear. We'll take this matter to the elders. Agnes said before she turned to Sean and grasped his hand in hers, as though she's shaking it in greeting. Continue your studies, Sean. Your uncle is an excellent role model. Agnes smiled fakely, as Sean nodded in agreement. As Agnes turned to leave, she muttered a hex under her breath. Déjà vu. Present day. The witches were furious with Kieran. Sophie tells me that the witches put a hex on his nephew Sean, made it seem like he was slowly losing his mind in order to distract Kieran while they kept planning for the harvest. Marcel explained. So they attacked Kieran's nephew. Klaus said, an angry glint in his eyes. Yeah, kid wasn't the same after that. Ended up going postal, killing all his fellow seminary students. All of them. And then himself. Marcel replied. Klaus, feigning ignorance, said, I might have read about that. The boy killed a twin, or he was a twin, or something. Ah, no, they said he had a twin sister. Marcel corrected, causing Klaus to down the rest of his scotch in one gulp, obviously angered at learning that the witches hexed Cammie's brother into killing all of those people. Street. Anne's church. Elijah was still fiddling around with the violin while Davina packed her suitcase. So, enlighten me. What did you mean when you said you had to die? Elijah asked, wanting to know more about the danger his niece was in. That's what the harvest was. They said they'd put us 4 girls in a state of, like, peaceful limbo as part of the offering. And then later, at the reaping, we'd awaken and be reborn. I never got as far as the limbo part, which means the harvest isn't complete. That's why the witches are so freaked out. The reaping is just around the corner, and if they don't finish it before then, it's over. All I have to do is wait it out. Davina explained. And then what? Elijah asked. They're punished, and I'm free. Of magic. All our power will drain away. I'll be normal, Davina said, looking at the seal on her palm with a smile. Is that what you want? To be normal? Elijah asked, confused. I just want to have a normal life. I can't do anything about being half vampire and werewolf, but Dad made sure that in California I can live normally, just like all the other people there. Davina ssid smilmg before Dhe frowned. I can't control it sometimes. Magic. She started to cry, hurt people. Even when I don't mean to. Elijah looked at her sadly. Before he changed the subject, why don't you tell me about your friends? You must miss them. There's Tim. He doesn't know about any of this witch stuff. He's normal. My best friend, Monique. She was a part of the harvest too. She's lucky. No one ever fought for me, but someone fought for her. The only one who ever spoke out against the harvest was Monique's aunt. And who is that? Elijah asked. Sophie Devereaux. Davina said, turning around to continue packing, not seeing her uncle look of shock. Bayou. Sophie, Rebecca, Naruto and Haley were in the clearing that held the dead witches. Naruto was sitting against a tree with Rebecca on his lap to distract Naruto from killing Sophie. Sophie had explained the harvest to them, but Naruto felt like she was holding something back. So, the ancestral covens slaughter children. Rebecca said. That's right, witches judge vampires, yet they are as bad as us. Naruto said, watching Sophie and Haley work. We have to unlink Haley from Sophie. I know. Rebecca said. So tell me what happened. Naruto said. We were awoken in Mystic Falls, to learn that Nick had killed father. Rebecca said, causing Naruto to twitch. Flashback. California. Music blasted on the stereos as vampires, witches, and werewolves partied together. Naruto was in his office sitting at his desk looking at a picture of Rebecca, with a glass of blood in hand. Suddenly Naruto tensed. You have a beautiful daughter. A voice said as a man stood in his office looking at a picture of a 5-year-old Davina. Thank you. Naruto said, not looking away from the picture as he took a sip of blood. Last I heard you were imprisoned in a crypt, he said to Michael. The doppelganger freed me, so that I can kill the whelp. Michael said. Seems you haven't changed, Naruto said before he grabbed a wooden 3-prong kunai and launched it at Michael, who swiftly turned around and caught it. Naruto appeared before Michael and grabbed his hand and pushed Michael back into the wall. Michael moved his head out of the way as the stake was inches from his neck. I didn't come to fight, Michael said. That's all you've done for 1,000 years. Naruto replied with a glare. Besides, if you really had peaceful intentions you would have left the stake, he said, looking down to the white oak stake aimed at his chest. Just know that if I die here, I'm taking you with me. Naruto finished as a trust-seeking orb formed into a stake appeared in his free hand aimed at Michael's chest. Michael smirked. Before he dropped the stake, before Naruto slowly released him and backed away, dismissing the orb. Why are you here? Naruto asked. I want you to help me kill Niklas, Michael said. Naruto raised an eyebrow before he chuckled and walked back to his desk. 1,000 years on this planet, and that's your first joke, Naruto said, picking up his glass before he turned back to Michael and leaned against his desk, as Michael picked up his stake, and placed it inside his blazer, before he stared at Naruto seriously. I have done lots of horrible things over the centuries, had lots of titles as well, but there is one title I can say that I will never attempt to have, Naruto said, standing up straight. I will never be a kinslayer. You would side with the beast? Michael asked, glaring. I side with the Mikhailson family. Naruto interrupted, placing his glass down before he stepped up to Michael. I will fight anyone that wishes to harm this family. Even if it is a member of the family itself. I've never sided against you. I've traveled with my siblings to protect them from you. To keep the vow you made to me 1,000 years after Henrik's death, when you and mother requested my blood. Naruto sighed. Father, please, just let it go. The world has enough land for you to put between yourself and Niklas. You can live eternity ignoring his existence, remarry. I've created a seal that allows our kind to have children, you can have another child. Michael walked to the doorway of the balcony. I can't give up my mission. I swore on my ancestors that I will not rest till that abomination is gone. I won't stop for anyone. Not even if it was Freya? Naruto asked. Michael tensed, but instead of replying he sped away, causing Naruto to sigh. End flashback. Naruto shook his head, and listened to Rebecca explain Esther had attempted to locate him with a locator spell but was unsuccessful. The barrier around California makes locator spells useless. Naruto said before he asked, what happened to Finn and Cole? Rebecca sighed before she explained the death of their brothers. Naruto was glad he killed Matt even more now. Now all he had to do was take a trip to Mystic Falls and find this Jeremy Gilbert boy. As the two continued to talk, they heard the sound of crunching footsteps nearby. Who's there? Haley asked as Naruto and Rebecca stood up to see Marcel's informant, Tomas. What the hell? Two originals? Tomas asked, getting shrugs from Rebecca and Naruto before he sped off scared. Call Nick. Haley, take my keys and go to the manor. Naruto said before he handed Haley the keys to his Bentley Continental and sped off after Tomas, who had mistakenly taken the long way to the bar. Big Augie's Bayou Bar, S Church, the Harvest. Klaus walked outside of Big Augie's Bayou Bar as he talked to Rebecca on his cell phone. Let me understand this against all logic. You, Naruto and Haley, went to the bayou, where you ran into a man you think may be Marcel's informant, and then you lost him. We didn't lose him. Naruto is hunting him down, and now that we've established that, you should probably know that he's on his way to Marcel right now to rat me out. Skinny guy in a hurry, looks like he saw a ghost. I'll handle it if he reaches here, but I'll need a distraction. Klaus said with a smile. I'm on my way, Rebecca said before she hung up, and slapped at a mosquito that had landed on her arm, before speeding off the fastest way to the bar. Klaus entered the bar again, with a sigh, and rejoined Marcel at the bar. Your sister again? Marcel asked. She craves attention. So, come along, you were just getting to the juicy bits. Klaus said. I can't joke around about this. I've done a lot in my day, but I do have a rule about kids. Street. Anne's church. Davina continued her story in her bedroom while Elijah listened intently. No one but Sophie ever questioned the harvest. I felt something was wrong when my mother banned me from calling Dad, but I put my suspicions aside because my mother looked so proud when I practiced, and what mother would hurt her own child? Davina said, not seeing the twitch from Elijah. We thought it was such an honor, we had such faith. We were so stupid. So, how did it begin? Elijah asked after taking a deep breath. We were led out like princesses. My mother was so proud. Davina said with a scowl as her seal glowed dimly. Flashback: the harvest ritual, 8 months ago. It was night now, and the 4 girls were led into the Lafayette Cemetery by the elders to start the harvest. Our magic fades as our ties to our ancestors weaken over time. We beseech them, accept this offering as a sign of our faith. Bastiana preached as the girls knelt in a row in the middle of the crowd of people. Bastiana, one of the elders, called upon the 4 elements to bind our past and future magic together. Earth, to connect us to our ancestors. Water, to heal the community. Wind, to carry us to our ancestors and back. Fire, to purify. After all our preparation, we knew exactly what to expect. For weeks, they told us that the magic in the knife they used to cut our palms would put us to sleep, and that later at the reaping, we would all be resurrected. They said we'd awaken, and all be together and more powerful than ever. And it was just like we rehearsed it. All that was left was a little cut on our palms for the blood sacrifice. Davina told Elijah. The first girl, Abigail, stood up to begin the harvest, but they were interrupted when Sophie ran into the cemetery. No. Stop. Bastiana. Stop. You have to stop. Bastiana. Please don't do this. Sophie yelled before a warlock grabbed her, a hand covering her mouth. Even after Sophie tried to stop it, we didn't suspect anything. Davina continued. To be born, you must sacrifice. Do you have faith? Bastiana asked. Abigail nodded in response, and held out her hand for the blood sacrifice. Instead, Bastiana slit her throat, and the young witch fell to the ground. The other three girls started to scream in terror. Davina brought her hand up to her mouth to draw blood and undo her seal, which would alert her father immediately, but she along with her friends were also restrained by warlocks so that they couldn't run away. Cynthia stared straight ahead as Cher's daughter screamed at her for help, ignoring how terrified she was. Street. Anne's church. Elijah looked at Davina in shock, clearly appalled by how she was treated, as his hands twitched and veins around his eyes bulged. Everyone involved in the ritual knew that this would happen. Elijah asked, keeping the anger out of his voice. Except the four of us. They weren't putting us to sleep, they were slaughtering us. Davina replied. Flashback: the harvest ritual, 8 months ago. The next witch, Cassie, was pushed forward, and Bastiana without hesitation slashed her throat with the knife as well, despite her protests, before Bastiana turned to Monique Devereaux. No, no, no. Davina pleaded frantically as a warlock forced Monique forward, ordered Bastiana to be sacrificed next. I begged for someone to help. My own mother turned away from me. Sophie screamed and screamed for her sister, anyone, to do something. What is wrong with you? Sophie screamed at Jane Ann, who looked worried, but did nothing. Street. Anne's church. But no one did. Davina said. With your seal in place you are a regular with, and yet, you survived. Therefore, someone or something intervened. Elijah said. Davina nodded. Her eyes were filled with tears. Yes. Someone finally did. Flashback: the harvest ritual, 8 months ago. Monique, run away. Run away. Sophie yelled desolately. Bastiana cocked her arm back ready to slash Monique's throat when a shrill whisper was heard, causing everything to stop, before a vampire dropped down, and broke a warlock's neck before tossing the corpse aside, before another vampire sped in and attacked a witch, draining her blood, before numerous vampires sped in, while Marcel walked in, his fangs out. Marcel. Sophie said, relieved, before Marcel with a growl sped to the nearest witch. Big Augie's Bayou Bar. You're the one who stopped it. Klaus said. Marcel nodded. Kieran knew every detail from Sophie. After his nephew's massacre in the church, he was so torn up, he left town just before the harvest. But on his way out, he came to me, and he asked me to stop the harvest. He knew I didn't want the witches getting any more power. And I do have a rule about people abusing kids, so, I did what he asked. But I was too late. Flashback: the harvest ritual, 8 months ago. A witch was thrown aside into a wall, before Bastiana's throat was ripped out, causing her to drop the knife, before Cynthia's heart, while Agnes picked up the knife from the ground, grabbed Monique, and slashed her throat with it. Sophie, who was watching, screamed in horror. No. Let go of me. Stop it. Stop it. Let go of me. Stop it. Davina screamed, hysterically trying to break free as she was being dragged away, before she slammed her head back into the warlock's nose, breaking it. Marcel, who was watching her fight, quickly rushed over to the man and snapped his neck before he grabbed Davina protectively. I got you. Marcel whispered. Big Augie's Bayou Bar. There was something about seeing Davina fight. She didn't just go along to the slaughter, you know. Marcel said. I do. Marcellus. Klaus said, smiling slightly. I felt like she and we were kindred spirits. Marcel said somberly. Flashback: the harvest ritual, 8 months ago. Marcel was still holding Davina, while Sophie knelt on the ground, holding Monique's body in her lap. Sophie looked up at Marcel and Davina, before Davina held her hand out towards Monique. A light inside Monique leaked out of her body, and into Davina's outstretched hand, while Sophie and Marcel stared at her in amazement. Street. Anne's church. Every girl who died released her power onto the next. When I was the last one, I suddenly had all of it, all the power that was supposed to be released back into the earth to appease our ancestors. Davina explained. So, the harvest was actually working? Elijah asked. Something was working. And I knew that I was supposed to be killed so the harvest could be completed and we would all be resurrected. But, they lied to us about how they were killing us. How do I know they weren't lying to us about coming back? But mostly, I just didn't want to die. So, I let him save me. Marcel saved my life. In the flashback, Marcel saw the surprised look on Sophie's face, and Vamp sped himself and Davina away before she could get hurt. In the present, Elijah was disgusted by how Davina was treated, before he stood up and walked over to her, and pulled her into a hug causing her gasp. Big Augie's Bayou Bar. You were quite the knight in shining armor. Though Davina must realize you owe her as much as she owes you. You never could have banned the witches from using magic without her. Klaus said. She's not exactly besties with them. I'm protecting her. A lot of them would like to get their hands on her and kill her to finish the harvest. If they don't, the other girls stay dead, and they lose their power. Marcel replied. And if they do, you lose yours. Klaus retorted. And Davina loses her life. Marcel returned. Isn't this like old times? Just how drunk are you two? Rebecca asked pleasantly. Skating on the razor's edge. I'm gonna use the loo. Back in a tick. Klaus said with a fake slur before he left while Rebecca stood next to Marcel at the bar. I haven't seen him this lushy since the 20s. Rebecca said. So, you came to take him home? Marcel asked. Why else would I be here? Rebecca asked. I don't know. Maybe to make sure I didn't get too drunk and spill secrets better left unspilled about you and me. I know better. Marcel said. I hope so, because our secret won't just affect Nick. Naruto doesn't do well with betrayal, I'm sure you remember. Rebecca said, getting a nod from Marcel as an image of Naruto with white hair and red eyes flashed in his head. Outside, Kaz walked outside and saw Tomas, who had just returned from the bayou. Tomas, I presume. Marcel asked me to find out what you know about the dead witches. Klaus said. I heard they were going after some pregnant werewolf. She was stupid, being out there all alone. Tomas reported. Yeah, she was, wasn't she? Yes. It's amazing how gullible some people can be. Klaus said with a chuckle. Tell me about it. Naruto said behind Tomas and Klaus. Tomas gasped and would have run off, but Naruto snatched his head from his shoulders, before he reduced the body to ash along with the head. Street. Anne's church. Davina was reading a paper that Nadia had magically sent her, when Elijah proudly held up Tim's fully repaired violin and handed it to Davina. You may return this now to its rightful owner. It's restored, he said. Davina took the instrument and stared at it sadly, as she remembered the song Tim had played for her. I don't even know if I'll see him again. Overwhelmed by emotions, Davina caused the room to shake, as if they were in an earthquake. Elijah and Davina looked around worriedly, before the window shutters bursted open as the shaking stopped. Davina, this power that you contain, drawn from your fallen friends, it's too much for you. You need control, which requires study and practice. Now, my mother was a very powerful witch. She left behind her grimoires, a legacy of books filled with spells. These books contain all of the tools that you might need to control your magic. If you free me from here, I can share them with you. Elijah said. The witches manipulated me. You know how that ended. Davina replied. This is not manipulation. This is an uncle helping his niece. Elijah said. You'll keep your promise about your mother's spell book? Davina asked. I will. Elijah confirmed before he said. You know, difficulties aside, I value my family above everything, and that includes you. Your brother Klaus handed you to Marcel in a box, yet you still don't give up on him. Davina asked. Well, as your father used to say, I've given up on giving up. It's an affliction. I will fight for my family until my last breath. Elijah said. And I'll fight the witches until mine. Davina replied, getting a nod from Elijah. With Naruto. Naruto was walking along the road debating on what he should do. He wanted to find every witch in the city and kill them, but that would show Davina that he was just like every other vampire, and he doesn't want his 16-year-old daughter to see him like that. Naruto suddenly stopped in front of a house. He could sense a familiar energy inside, but he couldn't put a face to it, so with a shrug he continued walking. I need a drink. Dowager Falling Cottage. In the locked attic of the witch asylum, the sun shined down on the glass cover of a coffin where Naruto's precious little sister Freya was in a magical-induced slumber. St. Anne's Church. Marcel was annoyed he had managed to give Rebecca the slip, so that he could move Davina into the plantation, but he was stopped by Kirin, who was attempting to scold him. Waving him off, Marcel walked toward the staircase. Kirin, seeing Marcel walking away, shouted, "You wanna be the boss? You wanna call the shots? Fine. But I call the shots with the humans. And you don't wanna make an enemy of me. So, I would suggest one thing. Stay away from my niece." Marcel scoffed and continued walking. Fine. Who the hell's your niece? He asked. Cammy. Kirin answered, causing Marcel to stop on the step, before he huffed in minor frustration and continued upstairs. Moments later, Marcel bursts into Davina's room to see her sitting down waiting. Okay, now's our shot. You ready to blow this joint? He asked. Can't wait. Davina said, smiling as Marcel grabbed her suitcase and the two got ready to leave the room. We'll leave Elijah behind as a parting gift. Might buy me a little forgiveness for pulling one over on his siblings. Let's go, Marcel said before he walked out the attic, while Davina gave her room a final parting glance before she left as well. When the two of them were out of earshot, Elijah pulled himself out of his coffin, and when he heard them leave the church he stepped out of the attic before with a smile he left. Rousseau's. Naruto was sitting at the bar alone drinking some bourbon. Another. He ordered, not looking up from his phone as he was getting updates on the state of California. You might want to slow down. Don't need you eating the clientele. Cammy said. With a small grin, Naruto lifted his refilled glass to his mouth before he said, Don't worry, I'm not really craving humans at the moment. Naruto took a gulp of his drink. Are you okay? Cammy asked. That's right, Nick said you were a shrink. Naruto said, placing his glass down before he sighed as he drew a silencing seal on a napkin with Cammy's pen before he activated it. I came back to New Orleans to find my daughter, and when I found her I learned that for the past 8 months, she was meant to be sacrificed for power, but she has survived and now every witch is on the lookout for her so that they can kill her. The only way I can protect her is if I were to kill all the witches, but that will show Davina that her father is just as monstrous, as she was told, and I have spent her whole life making sure that she has never seen my bad side. Cammy listened patiently, as Naruto ran his hands through his hair. I don't want her to fear, hate, or be disgusted with me. Naruto said. My siblings have feared me. When I fought to protect them, it was the first time I have really cut loose. Flashback. Europe, 1002 AD. Naruto and his family walked through the forest. They had just arrived in Europe. Naruto didn't know what the plan was. He had given Esther his blood when Michael had vowed that he wouldn't lose anyone else. Then Esther dies. Instead of confronting Michael, Naruto decided to stick with his brothers and wife to make sure that they stayed safe. The 6 immortals walked out of the forest only to stop when they saw an army of men throwing bodies in a pile. Every corpse was nude, and Naruto could see semen on bodies of both men and women, even the children. Savages. Naruto whispered, clenching his fist. We'll go around them. Naruto told the others, but before they could, they were spotted. Well, looks like we still have some left, said a man as the entire army turned to the siblings. We don't want any conflict, we are just passing through. Naruto said. Not anymore, ye not. You're gonna stay and have a romp with us, mate. A man yelled, getting cheers from his comrades before he and 5 others advanced on Naruto and the others. If ye run, we'll catch ye, and fuck each and every one of ye into the dirt. Get back, Naruto told the others. We can fight them, brother. Cole said. No, save your energy, Naruto said, and when the 6 humans were in reach, Naruto swung his hand and decapitated one, before he ripped out the heart of another, kicking another in his leg, tripping him up. Naruto ripped his heart out too, before he snapped another's neck and kicked the last one in his chest, caving it in. Elijah and the others saw Naruto's demonor change as he cracked his neck, You threaten my family with rape, you all die. Naruto said coldly before he sped forward, ripping out hearts, snatching heads, and tearing out throats. When more than half of the army was gone, the rest turned tail and retreated from the now white-haired Naruto, who was using truth-seeking orbs formed into chains, before he dismissed them, and a Rasen shuriken with a truth-seeking ball in the center was launched, reducing them to ash as it exploded. Elijah and his family watched in shock and horror, as Naruto stood there laughing loudly as a shockwave blew them off their feet. End flashback. Kami looked at Naruto in surprise. Every one of them were afraid of me. I acted to protect them, but I ended up almost driving them away. Naruto said. I can't risk that with Davina. Then don't. Kami said, placing her hand on Naruto's shoulder. Just keep her from the witches. Naruto looked at Kami before he gave a nod and stood up, giving her $100 tip. Thanks. Naruto said, taking his seal with him. Plantation. Marcel and Davina entered the plantation to see it, looking like no one has been there for a long time. So what do you think? Marcel asked. I like it. Better than being in the attic of a dusty old church. Davina said. Yeah, I'll get you some things to look at and you tell me what you want and I'll buy it for you, all right? Marcel said, getting a nod from Davina before he went out to go make a call. Davina watched him go. Flashback. 8 months ago. Davina and Marcel walked into the attic room for the first time immediately after the failed attempt at the harvest ritual. No one's gonna look for you here. It's only for a little while, till I get you out of town and someplace safe. For now I can get you whatever you want. What do you like to do? Marcel asked. Draw. Davina whispered nervously. I can't call Daddy. No one can know that he's my father. She thought. An artist. Huh. That's cool. Okay. I can buy out Vincent's for you tomorrow. Maybe get you some curtains, or. Marcel. You know what I really want? I wanna make them pay. Davina said, interrupting him, before Marcel nodded in agreement. Present. Davina smiled before she walked around the house. With Naruto. Naruto was walking towards the manor when he heard chanting, Lihatnat Dolchitni Ava's Elabuk Estupi. Looking around, Naruto saw travelers. Blinking, Naruto's eye twitched as he felt them use their pain-inflicting spell, as well as their suffocation spell. Feeling it start to take effect, Naruto with a growl summoned a truth-seeking orb and had it form into a long chain. The travelers, seeing this, chanted louder, but a swing of the chain reduced them to ash, except for one. With a flick of his wrist, the chain vanished before Naruto grabbed the traveler, who began to plead. Please don't kill me, I'll do whatever you want. She pleaded. Naruto, not on the mood for witches, sunk his fangs into her neck. Human path. He thought, ripping her soul out before he dropped her. So this Marco's character wishes to end the doppelganger line. They had Amara, but the Salvatore brothers stole her, and made a Bennett witch the new anchor with the help of a set of Gemini twins. Before Amara killed herself after drinking Catherine's blood, THST still held the cure. Probably shouldn't have left that at the bar. They don't know where Silas is. Seems they know I had something to do with his disappearance. They'll be coming for Catherine, soon. Naruto thought before he walked home to tell Nadia and Catherine about his day. 2 hours later. The abattoir. Marcel walked into the courtyard where Klaus was waiting for him up on the top of a cement barrier, taking me on a field trip to distract me. Pathetic. And obvious. I taught you better than that. You taught me to protect what's mine. You will not take Davina from me, end of story. Marcel said. An immutable law of nature, Marcel, is the strong always take from the weak. Klaus replied. Oh, if you were so strong, you wouldn't have run away from New Orleans like a little bitch all those years ago. Marcel retorted. Klaus jumped down from where he was standing and punched Marcel in the face. Sendi MG him to the ground. You've been playing king with a bunch of children for too long. Don't mistake me for one of your Nightwalker lackeys, Marcel. I can take Davina anytime I like, he said as Marcel stood up. Marcel lunged for Klaus, but he was knocked back down by Elijah, who had appeared out of nowhere. Do forgive me, Marcel. If anyone is to teach my brother a lesson, it's me. Klaus stared in shock at his brother, and didn't seem too pleased to see him. Michelson Manor. Rebecca poured several drinks as she talked to Haley, Nadia, and Catherine, I don't care if we have to get you a leash, that was your last trip to the bayou. What is it with you and those wolves, anyway? Rebecca asked. I feel like we're connected somehow. I don't know. Maybe it's just some pipe dream that I have of finding any other real family out there. But sometimes, when I feel like it's me against the world, it keeps me going. Haley said. Catherine and Rebecca gave Haley a sympathetic look before Catherine handed her a drink. Haley side-eyed her. Oh right. Catherine drank Haley's glass of bourbon in one gulp before pouring her own. Well, if you ask me, family is a pain in the behind. Rebecca said, causing Haley to roll her eyes. And as for being in it alone, how dare you? I don't ruin a perfectly fabulous pair of boots traipsing through the bayou for just anyone. Haley smiled, as Rebecca downed her drink. We may not be blood, but we are family, Haley. Nadia said, wrapping an arm around Haley's shoulder. We will fight for you. Catherine said as she downed her second drink. Haley smiled before their conversation was interrupted by Klaus walking through the front door. Nick, finally. What? Rebecca stopped when Elijah walked through the door after his brother with a huge smile. Rebecca and Nadia ran to Elijah and hugged him tight. Elijah saw Haley over Nadia and Rebecca's shoulder before they smile at each other, though Haley left the room right afterward, causing Catherine to smile as she nodded to Elijah. They never dated. Elijah, you're safe. Now that you're home, is your first plan to kill Niklas? Rebecca asked with a huge smile. Excuse me just a moment. Elijah said, kissing Rebecca's cheek before he walked through the living room toward the backyard. Where's he going? Nadia asked, confused. Naruto walked out the bathroom to see Elijah. The two shared a brotherly hug. I'm glad you are all right. Naruto said. Thank you. I promised Davina that I would share Mother's spell book with her. Elijah said. That's great. She needs to practice to control all of the power she now has. Naruto nodded. Excuse me. Elijah said, patting Naruto on the shoulder before he walked out the back door, where he found Haley standing on the patio. You're back, Haley said with an awkward smile. I'm back, Elijah replied with a grin. The two looked at each other for a moment, and then Haley slapped him in the face. Don't make promises you can't keep. Haley said before she turned to leave. Welcome home. Elijah touched his face where she slapped him, and smiled to himself as Haley headed inside. Later, everyone sat in the study, where Elijah stood behind the desk and explained everything that he had learned from Davina that day. Everything that brought us here to New Orleans was a lie. This story that Sophie Devereaux fabricated, this struggle for control of the French Quarter, this war between vampires and witches, wasn't over territory at all, this was over Davina. Flashback. Rousseau's, 8 months ago. In the back room of Rousseau's, Jane Ann and Sophie were both sobbing and arguing shortly after the failed attempt at the harvest ritual. I swear, I had no idea that the harvest could possibly be real. Sophie said hysterically. But the one thing that you were sure of is that I was wrong, and that I would risk Monique's life on a maybe. And now my daughter is dead. Jane Ann sobbed. Please tell me how to fix this. Sophie said. Now that Marcel has Davina, how we are even supposed to find her? If we don't finish the harvest, Monique and those two other girls are dead for real. Jane Ann replied. Sophie stepped toward her sister and grabbed her hands in determination. Look at me. You and I are gonna find a way to get Monique back. It'll be our little secret. We'll do it together. I'll seal off the cemetery from the vampires, find Davina, stop Marcel and finish the ritual once and for all. Even if I have to slit Davina's throat myself. Then we train ourselves to fight against Naruto. Present day, McCailson Manor. 8 months ago, Sophie Devereaux and her sister Jane Ann lost everything. Now, 4 months after that, a young pregnant girl wanders into their restaurant. Suddenly, all hope is renewed. Jane Ann actually sacrificed her life so that her sister can use you to find Davina. If Sophie Devereaux is successful in capturing Davina, she can return Jane Ann's daughter back to life. We thought we'd come here to wage a war for power. This is about family. In order to return her niece to life, Sophie Devereaux will fight to the death. That makes her more dangerous than anyone. Elijah said. Naruto, what are you going to do? Catherine asked. Keep Davina away from the witches, and when their power runs out, I will have Davina decide their punishment. Naruto said. Well, that's very peaceful of you. Klaus said with a grin. Would you have your own child see you as a monster? Naruto asked in return, effectively shutting Klaus up. Thought so. Well, our first objective is to unlink Haley for that lying bitch Sophie. Nadia said. As they came up with a plan, Sophie knelt in front of Jane Anne's grave at Lafayette Cemetery in the pouring rain, where she cried silently and stared at her family's gravestone. The end. That's it for this one. The creators stopped making the story, and I'm going to try to post the next story up as soon as possible. Sorry, I've been busy working. Please be patient.